As usual, a very busy week this past week on the IPFW athletic front, with action taking place on the golf course, the tennis course, the volleyball court, the baseball field, and the softball diamond, and also in the Royal Dons room as well. This week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll take a look at all those sports, talk about a new coaching position that's been filled, and we'll chat with Jeff Marsh, head coach for both men's and women's golf. It's Mastodon Spotlight. Stay tuned. Coming up next right here on College 56 Sports.
Do you know how many kids are risking their health by eating unhealthy foods, stuffing themselves, and not getting any exercise?
Thank goodness. You got here just in time. Where's the problem? In there.
Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?
Here, try this. The original fast food.
Doctors know that our children need a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, high-fiber vegetarian foods to help them grow up healthy. Call for a free booklet or visit kidsgethealthy.org.
Happy spring! It's time to think of chocolate eggs and Easter bunnies.
And we're thinking about children in town who would like to be a part of the fun.
We're the alumni directors of the area colleges and universities.
Each year we adopt an area school and provide filled Easter baskets for all the students.
We need 500 baskets.
Please consider donating filled wrapped Easter baskets for this very worthy cause.
Remember, all the items in the basket need to be wrapped and not homemade.
Then the entire basket should be wrapped.
You can drop off your baskets up until April 6th at any one of our colleges or universities.
With your help, we'll make 500 children's spring a bit brighter this year.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Moss. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight, where we attempt to take an in-depth look at IPFW athletics. As I said a few moments ago, as usual, a busy week. The spring seasons are in full bloom, so to speak. Action taking place all over the place here at IPFW. Before we do our normal review of talking about the actual spring sports, I want to start this week by announcing that we have a full-time new women's head basketball coach. Last week, the 22nd, athletic director Mark Pope called a press conference for late in the afternoon. And at that press conference, he announced that Chris Paul, who was the interim head coach for the balance of the 2005-2006 season, now gets the job permanently, and we wish Chris the best of luck. We hope to have him on in a couple of weeks here on Mastodon Spotlight. So congratulations to Chris Paul. Now let's get into our spring sports, and we'll start with the national pastime, the game of baseball. Last week, Coach Billy Gernon's team was supposed to travel on the road. They had a game scheduled at Valparaiso, but that was postponed due to inclement weather. So then they traveled west to Iowa City, Iowa, where they're going to take on the Hawkeyes of the University of Iowa, member of the Big Ten, in a 3-game series. Games were initially scheduled for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday's game was rained out, so they played a pair of games on Saturday. And in game number 1, the Iowa Hawkeyes defeated IPFW by a final score of 5-1. Mastodons only able to collect 6 base hits. Ryan Keena picked up 2 of those 6 hits. Eric Lambert was the losing pitcher. That was game 1. In game 2, a much different story. A pitcher's delight. 1-0 10-inning affair with the Mastodons coming out on top. Tyler Fowler and Zach Walton each collected a pair of hits. And I messed it up last week, and I hope I don't mess it up again this week. The winning pitcher for IPFW is Cole Elbahor, spelled U-E-B-E-L-H-O-R. And Cole went the entire 10 innings, didn't allow any runs, just gave up 4 hits, walked 1, struck out 4. Gained his first win of the year. Again, game 2, a 10-inning affair. IPFW wins that one 1-0. So they split the doubleheader on Saturday, and then they played the finale on Monday. And unfortunately, Iowa got upset because they lost in extra innings, and they thumped IPFW by a score of 11-1. Well, that's action. That's action on the baseball diamond. From the baseball diamond, let's shift gears to the softball diamond. Coach Keith Fisher's squad has had some troubles getting out of the gate. They played last Friday, believe it or not, extra innings here at home in Fort Wayne. And in the bottom of the 8th inning, freshman Kayla Vargo connected on a game-winning Grand Slam home run to lift the Dons to victory, a final score of 7-3. And that was one of 3 hits in that game for Kayla. And the Dons got a badly needed win. They were supposed to play 2 games that day, but Mother Nature said, no way, Jose. Second game was called off because of actually snow flurries that were flying. But again, a big win in that game over Wright State. Then the next day they went to Cleveland State, and unfortunately, a lot of errors, 6 errors. Don's only able to collect 3 base hits, and the Vikings of Cleveland State defeated IPFW 9-1. Then they finished off their weekend on the road, playing a couple of games in Indianapolis against the Butler Bulldogs. The Dons won Game 4, 8-4, lost the nightcap 4-0, and in that nightcap, the Dons were unable to get a base hit, and so they split the doubleheader at Butler down in Indianapolis. Now, from baseball, we go to my favorite sport, and we're going to put the emphasis on this sport in this program today, the game of golf. Coach Jeff Marsh's squads, both men's and women's, were down in Indianapolis last week. Again, tournaments put on by Butler University. The men's Butler Spring Invitational took place. Only one of the 2 scheduled rounds were able to be completed. University of Cincinnati won the event with a team score of 300. IPFW came in tied for 4th. Their score of 311. Patrick Kelly tied for 6th. He had a 74. Nathan Hoff tied for 18th. You see that with a 78. Zach Pucon with a 79. Patrick Leffers with an 80. Again, the second round canceled due to inclement weather. The women's team was also down there in Indianapolis. And in the women's Butler Spring Invitational, IPFW finished in 7th with a team score of 348. Ball State came out on top. Their score 317. Nicole Geyer, 86. Allison Rathsman, Abby Waltke with 87. Stephanie Hops with an 88, leading the way on the golf course. And then finally, the other sport that took place over the weekend was men's volleyball, and the Volley Dons are rolling. 2 matches. Oh, yeah, you're correct. Thank you, Bernie. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The volleyball team won 2 matches, extending their winning streak to a school record 14. They defeated Mercyhurst on Friday night, winning in straight sets 30-22, 30-14, and 30-21. CJ Macias led the way with 10 kills. Sardar Sikja had 10 kills, 6 block assists. That tied the school record, and then Saturday night, in front of nearly 1,100 fans, the Dons broke the record, defeating Clark College from Dubuque, Iowa, winning those games by scores of 30-27, 30-24, and 30-18. Game 3 was a wild one. The Dons were ahead 18-4 at one point. CJ Macias with 19 kills and 9 digs leading the way. Mike Dyga had a great game, 9 kills, 4 service aces, and 3 block assists. The Dons now 16-5, a half a game out of the lead in the MIVA. 2 important matches this weekend we'll talk about later. And then out of turn, but we're going to get it back in sequence, the final sports we covered was the sport of tennis. Both teams were on the road this past week. Men's tennis played match at Western Illinois on Saturday. They lost by a score of 5-2. The 2 victories, Carlos Gonzalez at number 3 singles, Herman Kuschke at number 4 singles. Excuse me. Then on Saturday, they stayed in the state of Illinois, and that was Saturday's. I'm sorry, I'm missing one. Northern Illinois they played as well, and they lost by a score of 6-1. Herman Kuschke got the only win, and he played number 3 singles that day. That took care of the men's tennis. The women's tennis had 3 matches last weekend. There's the Northern Illinois match. Thank you, Bernie. Herman Kuschke and the freshman winning at number 3 singles, winning 1-6, 6-2, 10-8. And the women's tennis team had 3 matches, all in the state of Illinois. On Friday, they were at Bradley University in Peoria, lost 5-2. Ashley Colson, that we had on last week, won at number 2 singles, and Lisa Bottelheim went 3 sets to win at number 4 singles. That was the bad news for the women's team. The good news, on Saturday, they defeated Western Illinois 6-1. And on Sunday, they defeated Northern Illinois, IUPUI, Monday. I get my dates right, trust me, 4-3. So the women's team now is 14-10 overall. That's what took place this past week. Time for me to take a break. When we come back, I'll be joined by Jeff Marsh, and we'll take a more in-depth look at the IPFW men's and women's golf programs. Again, this is Mastodon Spotlight. Back in a moment right here on College 56 Sports.
Pizza! Pizza! must eat. Wait, what is this? Capsicum annum? Agaricus bisporus? Allium cepa?
Can we eat this?
Peppers, mushrooms, and onions. Eat your pizza, man.
Funny.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
It starts in your own neighborhood. When you care enough to give your time to help someone still learning the way and getting involved in the needs of your community.
Once you've helped bring a smile to someone's face and help brighten their day, you'll be hooked for life.
The Major League Baseball Players Trust and Volunteers of America are teaming up to make a real difference in the lives of the people in our communities. Join a winning team. See what you can do to help.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. As I said a few moments ago, our emphasis this week is going to be on my favorite sport, the game of golf, and we're happy to have back with us on the program the head coach for both men's and women's golf here at IPFW. Hello again, Mr. Jeff Marsh.
Thanks, Mike. Well, glad to be here.
The weather outside, not conducive to golf today, but the 2006 portion of the schedule is now underway, and you've made a couple of trips. One down to Florida, where someday I hope to get to, and one down I-69 to Indianapolis. Let's talk about the men's team first, the makeup of the team and what's going on here in the spring portion of the season.
Pretty much the same as we had in the fall. No real change or anything, but you know, Patrick Kelly, freshman, still playing very well. Matt Fry, everybody is still, you know, doing very well. We had a very good off season where we got in the gym and we did some strength and conditioning and did some other things. They even did yoga this year, which was a big help. So
let's talk about that a little more in detail. People think of players playing golf. It's a great game for all ages, all sizes, but when we talk about conditioning, golfers are student athletes. They're athletes as well. You and I can fight that to the death.
Absolutely.
In the off season, which for IPFW is the winter portion of the school year, when there's snow on the ground, just exactly what do you have these student athletes do in trying to build up shoulder strength, leg strength, hip strength, the hand strength, the whole 9 yards. Talk briefly about the conditioning program.
2 days a week. We start on Tuesday mornings. They have actually strength and conditioning where they're using a lot of medicine balls, a lot of the big inflatable balls, and some hand weights. Is to increase their strength but not to build up bulk. The worst thing you can do for a golfer is to build a bulk type person. And then the other 2 days of the week we actually spend an hour doing yoga, which is to increase their flexibility. Yoga, the version that we're doing, also help with their strengthening a little bit and also help them to clear their mind and to become a little bit more focused. And so it's 4 days of pretty intense of workouts. And I can't be more than happy. You know, what they did for the 4 days was perfect. I'm already seeing benefits from it. Coming out of the winter where we're somewhat stagnant as far as being without a club in our hand, they've picked up much better this year than they did last year coming out of the winter. So,
when we look at the men's roster, we have 2 seniors on the team, Patrick Leffers, Craig Sauter, but then it's a young team, a number of juniors, 1 sophomore, Nathan Hoff, and 3 freshmen. The nice thing you've been able to establish with the men's program is depth.
Absolutely.
Because you can have literally the shootouts at the OK Corral on the first tee to determine who's going to play in which tournament.
That's right. In fact, that's what they're doing these 2 days. I think there are 2 of them that are out on the golf course right now trying to get their rounds in. We have some classes we have to work around, and that's very understandable. So, yeah, I think 2 of them teed off this morning at 8 o'clock trying to get 27 or 36 holes in today so they can get ready to travel for Eastern Kentucky.
Well, we mentioned you played 2 tournaments down in Jacksonville, Florida, at the Butler North-South Intercollegiate back on the early part of this month. Not a bad turnout.
No.
Not a bad performance.
Good turnout, good field, and performance was much better. Our score this year was 25 shots better than last year. I'll take that any day. Same golf course, a lot of the same conditions. It was a little warmer this year than last year, but it was extremely windy. You know, the guys played very well. I was very pleased with their efforts going down in. We actually were able to get down there ahead of time this year. Last year it was about a 4-day quick trip. This year we were down for about 8 days, and we had some outside practice, and that was a definite help to us, a good benefit to get outside.
But then things reverted to normal for Indiana weather. Last
True.
week, you came back and you went down to Indianapolis, and we talked briefly about the Butler Invitational. Only able to get in one of the two scheduled rounds. Wee bit different climate playing up here in the north than it is down south.
Absolutely. The temperature, I believe, got to 42. The wind chill was just a shade over freezing, and we will play in that weather. But again, the guys, I thought, played very well. They shoot .311, and you know, Cincinnati shoots .300. They had a chance, you know, to play very well. We struggled a little bit finishing up our last few holes, which cost us some shots, but still, they were 23 shots better first round compared this year to the first round last year. So I'm seeing the improvement, and again, that's because we've been able to, I attribute a lot of that to being able to get outside down in Florida and get a good, you know, 7-day stretch in there where we could play. So no, I was pleased with their efforts.
We'll put the men aside for a brief moment. Let's bring in the women's golf team now. A little bit different situation. You don't have the depth that you would like.
Right.
You've got 5 student athletes on board, so they all get to play, which is good news for them from a psychological standpoint. They know they're going to play, but they still have to get the whip tossed at them every now and then to help them to improve their performance.
They still have to go through qualifying just like the guys do, even though they're all 5 going. It's an extra way for me to evaluate them, see how their progress is going, and then if I need to make some changes in as far as the order that they play, that helps me out there. So,
what's the value of moving players up or down in a lineup?
It can be, depending on the tournament, it can be a big value. It's a important thing. I look at it a little differently. I put them in a place where I know they're going to feel comfortable playing. For instance, my number 1 player has been playing number 2. My number 3 player has been playing number 1. So it's more of a comfortable factor, because if they don't feel comfortable playing, it's going to be hard for them just to even get started. So I've made a couple changes throughout the year, but pretty much it's more of a comfort factor. And then depending on the tournament, sometimes we'll reshift during the 2nd round or 3rd round based on how they fare.
Well, they also went to Florida and fared somewhat well, 14th out of a 17-team field on the women's side of that Butler North-South Invitational, or Intercollegiate, I should say. Allison Rathsman, the sophomore, finished tied for 29th. And then last week, somewhat decent performance by Nicole Geyer, who was medalist for the Dons.
She's, we've been working on her swing. A lot of it more on her timing and her tempo. It's not necessarily a mechanical thing, and we're now starting to see some of the fruits of her labor and hard work. Her qualifying yesterday went very well. She played, you know, pretty good considering the cold weather and everything. But as she gets more comfortable with the timing and everything, things will start to come together real fast for her.
Women's team is a young team because they've got 3 freshmen, 2 sophomores. And you do have some help coming on the way because you did sign a gal out of Mishawaka Marion High School, who ironically is also a sister of one of the members of the team.
Right.
She'll be coming here next year to play. But how do you get other gals to try to come out and play golf?
Well, fortunately, we do have one more that's going to be signing this spring. Obviously, I can't get into any of that, but there will get us to 7. And then I also have other ladies right now that I'm still talking to that are still interested in coming. The thing that I wanted to do with our recruiting, obviously we try to stay within our backyard a little bit because there's so many very good golfers in the area. I have one girl out of Illinois that I've been talking to that academically and athletically is very good. But we're trying to get good quality players, not only athletically but also academically, that can come in and take advantage of IPFW's you know, requirements and qualities that it has as a school. So
let's take that academics and take it down a slight side road, so to speak. Let's talk about the mental situation with golf. And of course, you've been a professional, and I've enjoyed the game and been fortunate to play in some tournaments in back in my youth. It's physical part of the game. There's a mental part of the game. Talk about the mental part of the game for both the men's and the women's teams. With the men, obviously, you know, it's dog-eat-dog shootout, as I said at the OK Corral, just to get into playing a tournament. The women, they know they're going to play, but they don't know where they're going to play. Talk about what it's like on a golf course.
Well, we, after, you know, 2.5 years, I took a hard look over the winter of certain things that we were doing as far as preparation for a tournament, what we were doing in practice, And the thing that it basically came down to is that I wanted to get them, when we practice and qualify, I wanted them to get them in the habit as if they were in the tournament. So we changed a lot of drills that we were doing and their thinking as far as how they prepare, how they do and go through the drills. So that now it's not so foreign to them when they tee it up in a tournament. So a lot of the drills that we do during practice focus on, in essence, practice like you play. So we have certain drills now, like for instance, when we practice our putting, we only use one golf ball. Because when you're out playing in a golf tournament during your round, you're only allowed one golf ball to putt with instead of having 3 down there. So we're doing little things like that to get them back into the habit of when they're actually practicing, it's focused more on the quality compared to what they're doing in an actual tournament. And I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of individuals about different drills along those lines. And we started that in when we went down to Florida, and I attribute our better play this spring to that as well. So we're just getting them in the habit of practicing like they're playing, and then we're extremely positive. If I hear a negative thing come out of their mouth, I immediately get on top of them because you can't let negative thoughts get into you. Golf is a different sport other than basketball, football, volleyball. Those are games that are constantly moving. We have a difference in the fact that we hit a shot and then we walk for 5 minutes, so you have time to think about it. So we try to get those negative thoughts out of our mind and continue to stay positive.
We commend you on your work ethic. The team's performing better. We wish you well down the road.
Thank you.
And we'll get together in a few weeks and check on the progress of these teams.
Sounds good.
We've been chatting with Jeff Marsh, the head coach for both men's and women's golf here at IPFW. We'll take our final break, come back, let you know what's happening next week on the athletic front when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
Guys, what do you got? Got a 28-year-old black male, got 3 gunshot wounds to the chest. 1 upper chest, 1 lower chest, 1 center. Bleeding a lot.
There are 2 paths a child can take.
Sir, try not to move. Still.
We have a 28-year-old male.
For over 25 years, we've been helping children choose the right one. Communities and schools, helping kids stay in school and prepare for life.
This is firstgov.gov.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration.
Where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time.
Just log on or email us and get what you need. firstgov.gov.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Again, we want to thank Jeff Marsh for giving us a few minutes of his time. All the coaches here on campus have been great over the years, coming in and talking with us, be it on Mastodon Spotlight or one of our other coaches shows. And their time is limited, so we really appreciate it when they can come over and speak with us and to you. Well, as I said, it never stops. The action never stops here at IPFW on the athletic front. And let's take a look at what's going to take place this coming week. We will start with Billy Gernon's baseball team. As I arrived here today, I had a chance to speak with a couple of the players. They were getting on a bus heading down to Dayton, Ohio to take on the University of Dayton. So we wish them well. Later this week, they will take on Central Michigan at home. That's on Wednesday the 29th. And on Thursday the 30th, they're going to play Calumet College in a doubleheader. First pitch, game 1, scheduled for 1:30 p.m. And so that's what's going to take place on the men's baseball front. With Jeff Marsh's golf teams, they were not in action this week. The men's team goes down to Eastern Kentucky this weekend on the 31st of March, 1st of April, and they're going to play in an invitational there. The women's team doesn't go back to work until April 3rd, when they're going to go down to Ohio to take part in the University of Cincinnati, University of Dayton Women's Collegiate Invitational on the 3rd and 4th of April. Softball team, they were supposed to be playing Dayton today, but that game was called off due to the weather situation outside because it was raining all night. Their next action after that, weather permitting, tomorrow, which will be, Wednesday, you're seeing this on Wednesday, would have played Michigan State. And then they will play at Valparaiso later in the week in a doubleheader. That's this week for women's softball. Tennis teams, again, they are both somewhat successful. The men are 8-10, the women are 14-10. This weekend, the men are at home against Northern Colorado on Friday, I should say, the 31st. And then on Saturday, they're going to play host to both Western Michigan and Huntington University. And then next Monday, the 3rd of April, they will be at Valparaiso. That's the men's team. The women's team also scheduled to play on Saturday against Huntington University and Monday at Valparaiso. And last, two more sports to cover real briefly. Women's track and field. Mike Frucci, we're hoping that he can get on the program soon. There's always been a schedule issue with Mike, but hopefully we can get him on. They're going to be down in Cincinnati this weekend to take part in the Nickoloff Invitational down in Cincinnati. And then last but not least, a big weekend here at the Heriot Sports Center for men's volleyball. Volleydons now with a school record 14 match victories in a row. They're 16-5. They're half a game out of the MIVA lead. Two important matches. Friday night, 7 o'clock against Lewis University, team that defeated IPFW in Illinois earlier this year. Saturday, 7 o'clock, the Ohio State Buckeyes come to town. They're going to have revenge on their minds because IPFW rallied from a 2-0 deficit to defeat Ohio State 3-2 in Columbus a few weeks ago. Two very important matches at the Gate Center Friday and Saturday. They both start at 7 o'clock. If you cannot come to the Gate Center in person, tune in to College 56 Sports. Women's assistant volleyball coach Steve Florio and I will bring you all the action. First serve scheduled each night for 7 p.m. That's it for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Again, we want to thank Jeff Marsh for spending time and talking about the men's and women's golf programs. We want to thank you for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW athletics. I want to invite you to come back again next week for another edition of the program. But until then, again, this is Mike Moss. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please have a good week. Come on out to the Gate Center and see volleyball action this weekend and check other sports as well. And please remember to always go Dons. The IPFW athletic season continues on spring style. This past week, baseball played their first games at home. Volleyball kept their winning streak alive. Softball, tennis, and golf also competed, as did women's track and field. On this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll tell you about all of those sports. Our special guest is Ryan Perrott. We're going to talk in depth in segment 2 about men's volleyball. Mastodon Spotlight in its 7th year. It's coming your way next right here on College 56 Sports.
Hey, college students, here's a little quiz.
How much of the actual cost of your tuition is paid by you?
Only 60 to 80%.
That's right. Some of the remaining money comes from another source.
Your alumni pay part of your tuition just like graduates before them paid a part of theirs.
So next time you run into a graduate from your college or university,
Give him or her a pat on the back and a big thank you.
When alumni give back to their alma mater, their college can keep the success rolling.
Thanks to all of our alumni for your support.
We couldn't afford education without you.
Mom, Dad, you know we love kids, and I've made a decision that will totally change my life. Cameron's too. It's a huge responsibility, leading someone into, who knows, communication or science or math. That's what life's all about, right? Learning so you can pass on knowledge to younger minds. Dad, Mom, I want to be a teacher.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Miles. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight, where we make a weekly attempt at taking an in-depth look at IPFW athletics. Our special guest this week is my old sidekick, Ryan Perrott, formerly of Channel 56, formerly an intern with Channel 33, but now his primary function is Arnie Ball's right-hand man as one of the assistant coaches for IPFW men's volleyball. First and foremost, I'm glad to have you back and appreciate you coming over.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our weekly review, as always, we'll start with baseball, usually going by the alphabet, and B just happens to be the first sport we touch. We will go with. Men's baseball last week had one road game we're going to talk about briefly. Billy Gardner's team traveled to Dayton, Ohio to take on the Flyers of the University of Dayton, coached by former IPFW head baseball coach Tony Vittorio. And the news was not so good. The Dons couldn't get the ball out of the infield, and they lost that game by a final score of 4-0. And they were happy to get out of town and head back to Fort Wayne. But again, 4-0 shutout. We'll tell you in a later segment they're going to try to extract some revenge this week here in Fort Wayne. Then that was on the 28th, and on the 29th of March, the team played their first home game of the year. A formidable opponent, the Chippewas. There's the Dayton score. Thank you very much. Last Tuesday, March 28th, Dons just collecting 4 base hits. Ryan Keena had 2 of those 4 hits. Again, 4-0 Flyers over the Mastodons. Then on Wednesday the 29th, Central Michigan came to town, and the Chippewas out of the Mid-American Conference. A little bit of a slugfest. IPFW spotted the Chips 3 runs early, came from behind, and defeated Central Michigan 11-6. The Dons pounded out 11 hits in that particular contest. Brett Doty had his first home run of the year, a 3-run shot, and again, the Dons win their first home game of the year. And then the next day, Thursday the 30th, they played a doubleheader against Calumet College, and the Whoopin' Sticks came out again. The Dons shut out Calumet 12-0 in Game 1, defeated them 12-2 in Game 2. In the doubleheader, Ryan Keena went 5 for 7 with 3 runs scored and 8 runs batted in. Eric Lambert got the win in Game 1, throwing a 3-hitter, and Cole Eberhor got the Game 2 victory. He also gave up just 3 base hits. With the doubleheader sweep, the baseball team is now 11-11 on the year. From baseball, let's turn to softball. Team had a couple of doubleheaders last week. Before we tell you about those 2 games, briefly we want to tell you that 2 members of the team were selected Independent Players of the Week for the week of March 20th. Casey Stone and Kayla Vargo, congratulations to them. Now, the team had 2 doubleheaders. On the 29th, they played host to Michigan State University from the Big Ten. And some fielding woes and some hitting woes. Final score, Spartans 13, Dons 2 in Game 1. In game number 2 was Michigan State 7, IPFW nothing, just 2 base hits in game number 2. In that doubleheader, Jenna Beachy got 3 of those 7 hits. Double dip loss at home on Wednesday the 29th. Then the next day, the 30th, they traveled up US 30 to Valparaiso, took on the Crusaders from the Mid-Con. A couple of tough losses. In game 1, it was a 2-0 Crusader victory. And in Game 2, Valparaiso scored the only run of the game with 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th inning to defeat IPFW by a score of 1-0. Good pitching, just not able to get a key hit here and there. A little bit of a struggle for Keith Fisher's squad. They are now 3-21 on the year. From softball, let's turn to golf. And we had Jeff Marsh on last week. Women's team not playing in a tournament this week, but the men's team did travel to Kentucky, at Eastern Kentucky to be precise, to play in their spring invitational in Richmond, Kentucky last week. And IPFW had a respectable showing. Tennessee Tech won the tournament with a 54-hole score of 882. And IPFW had their score of was 936. They came in 9th overall. There we go. Matt Fry led the way for the Dons, finished tied for 22nd. His score 229. Patrick Kelly 234. And Nathan Hoff, one of 3 Dons who were tied for 52nd with a 54-hole score of 238. Now from golf, let's go to tennis briefly. The men's team had 3 matches last week. On Friday the 31st, they took on the Bears of Northern Colorado. and defeated UNC 6-1, winning all 3 doubles matches and 5 of the 6 singles matches. On Saturday, they played 2 opponents. Western Michigan from the Mid-American Conference, a powerhouse. Broncos ranked 45th in the country, won all the matches, 6 singles, 3 doubles, defeated IPFW 7-0. Mastodons, a little upset, took their frustration out on Huntington University. The Foresters were shellacked later that day, also by a score of 7-0. IPFW winning 2 of the 3 doubles matches and all 6 singles matches. Women's team just had 1 match. That was also against Huntington last Saturday, and they improved to 15-10 overall with a 7-0 victory over the Foresters. Again, IPFW's women's team winning all 3 doubles matches and all 6 singles matches. 2 quick sports. Women's track and field participated in a tournament at a track meet, I should say, at the University of Cincinnati. Came in 6th overall, and a good showing. A couple of more first-place finishes. Ashley Ritchie in the 5,000-meter run, and Lauren Simpson in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. They had individual victories, and Laura Williams set a school record in the shot put. There you see Ashley's time 17:45, Lauren's time 11:24, and then Laura Williams set a school record of 11.77 meters in the shot put. So they are performing very well. That leaves one sport, men's volleyball. There were 2 matches played. We will take a break, and then we're going to get Ryan Perot's expertise. Big wins over Lewis and Ohio State. We'll talk about that and more when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment, right here on College 56 Sports.
Do you know how many kids are risking their health by eating unhealthy foods, stuffing themselves, and not getting any exercise?
Thank goodness. You got here just in time. Where's the problem? In there.
Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?
Here, try this. The original fast food.
Doctors know that our children need a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, high-fiber vegetarian foods to help them grow up healthy. Call for a free booklet or visit kidsgethealthy.org.
One breakthrough machine gave us insight into the bones, as another did for the heart, and another for the brain. Now doctors are using a new machine to practice medicine and save lives. The difference is, it's one you can use too. When you log on to medlineplus.gov from the National Library of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health, you're tapping into the largest, most comprehensive medical website in the world. Medlineplus.gov, the website doctors prescribe.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. As we said earlier, at least I hoped I said earlier, our primary emphasis this week is going to be on men's volleyball. Contrary to the Fort Wayne Comets, the hottest ticket in town is right here at the Hilliard Gate Sports Center. Our special guest is Ryan Perot, the assistant coach, one of the assistant coaches for head coach Ernie Ball. And 2 big matches last week, Ryan. The first match was on Friday night, payback of sorts. The Flyers of Lewis University were in town, and I mentioned payback because Lewis defeated IPFW in Romeoville several weeks ago, 3-1, I believe. Right. And that was followed up by a tremendous victory over the Buckeyes of Ohio State. First and foremost, this volleyball team is just on fire.
We are on fire. We've been playing really well the last month and a half, 2 months. A lot of confidence. Obviously, winning breeds confidence. But it's a direct correlation to the way that we've trained, both with Paul Zinchenko from Performance One, our out of kind of team volleyball per se training, and then obviously the way that we've practiced throughout the course of the year. We've worked really hard, really diligently at trying to become better volleyball players. And after getting off to such a slow start at 2-5, you know, we were able to turn it around, and you know, now we've got on this unbelievable winning streak.
16 match victories in a row. The team is 18-5 overall, and 9-2 in MIVA play. We'll talk about that more in a moment. We've got some highlights from these matches with Lewis and Ohio State, and we're going to show them to you momentarily. The Lewis match, we said, was a payback match, and yet when our viewers see the final numbers on that match, 30-16, 30-16, 30-17, there was complete domination, almost from the opening serve.
Well, we got off to a great start, and that's what did not happen in Romeoville, the very first match of the year, or at least our very first conference match of the year, where we came out flat. we came out of the blocks on fire, and our serving was aggressive. Our backcourt defense was there, which wasn't there the first time we played them. And we win the first game handily, and then a little complacency set in early in game 2 because we won so handily in game 1. There was a point that I thought we might win actually 30-10, to be honest with you, which is unheard of in rally scoring these days. But we played really well, and I don't know if it was a revenge factor, if that was a motivational. It probably was for a lot of the guys. Obviously, they didn't talk about it much, but they were just really focused to make sure we got in, we got out quickly, because we had another big match the next night against Ohio State. And not that we were overlooking Lewis at all, obviously, because they upset us early, but we wanted to get in there, make a statement, and then play Ohio State.
One of the things that Steve Florio and I noticed, and we actually commented on during the broadcast with Lewis, so many freshmen and sophomores on that team.
Right. It's a rebuilding process for them. Obviously, the sanctions brought down by the NCAA a couple years back because of recruiting violations throughout the university. Obviously, they were stripped of their championship that they won in men's volleyball a couple years back. So it's Dan Fredden, their head coach over there, has done a really nice job bringing in some young freshman talent. They will be, obviously, they're very competitive this year. They will get better next year, and look out for them maybe in a couple years for sure, 2 to 3 years when these guys are juniors and seniors.
These are highlights right now. We're in game 2 of this match, and it's competitive. You see 14-11 with the serve.
Well, their backcourt defense is something that we struggled with at their place. You know, many teams, and I know we're going to talk about Loyola momentarily, but many teams when they play on the road, they're just, it's a different environment for them, and the execution factor usually isn't there. At Lewis, they played such great backcourt defense. They elongated the points. And that's obviously very frustrating when you play the power game like we do. We're not a finesse team. We come straight at you with the power game. Obviously, there's C.J. Macias out of the backcourt. And they just frustrated us by keeping balls off the floor, making the points longer, and winning those long points. And that's very deflating to you emotionally.
This is game point in game number 2. And look at that again. All facets of the game are just really functioning very, very well. The serving, the passing, the digging, the blocking. And I know hopefully our viewers will watch the Arnie Ball Show this week, not because I was Arnie's special guest, but just over the fact, I mentioned the fact that this team is so enjoyable to watch.
Well, we are clicking on all cylinders right now. We spend an inordinate amount of time on serving and passing, and that is the area, believe it or not, that has picked up the greatest for us. Our passing stats this year have been off the charts. They really have. I mean, we're in the 2.3 to 2.6 range on a consistent basis. Serving directly relates, in my opinion, when you serve really well, directly relates to blocking. And obviously we are the best blocking team in the conference, and that's a direct correlation because when you serve aggressively, the options for your opponent minimizes. And we're a really good reblocking team right now. Obviously Josh Stewart and Sidar Sikcha leading the way in terms of blocking. And then we have picked up the last couple weeks our backcourt intensity. There's Mike Marisi making one heck of a play early in game 1 that we never got to early on in the season. And he's picked up his play tremendously. He's playing with such great confidence right now. But the entire facet of the game, there are our left sides, Brock Ulrich putting a couple balls away, but our entire facet now of the game, we're playing at a really nice high level. Obviously the confidence is there. We feel we can do anything. We feel like we can beat anybody, and it flows over to the way that we play.
Again, 30-16, 30-16, 30-17. As a team that night, IPFW hit 494.
Right.
Now, one of the matches played the early week, because at Mercyhurst, the team hit over 500. That's unheard of.
Yeah, it really is. You know, with teams, I remember the great Ohio State team back in 1999, back in the old side-out days. I mean, they were over 500. But to hit anywhere close to 500 these days, it's just amazing.
Well, that was Friday night. And then on Saturday night, the Ohio State Buckeyes came to town, and the Buckeyes are 13th ranked team in the country, IPFW 12th. The Dons stole one in Columbus several weeks ago. We've got highlights from that match as well. And in game 1 especially, the Dons came out on fire.
Well, this was obviously an important match for us. You know, Ohio State still trying to creep. I think they were 4th in the conference. They still believed at the time entering the match that they can still vie for a number 2 spot, which we currently sit. The crowd from the get-go was really energized. There was a buzz in the air, And as I mentioned earlier off the air, I'm glad that we were able to play well, so they were able to get into the match and stay into the match because we made some really nice, exciting plays. This long rally here, Brock Ulrich going off the top there. I mean, just plays like that to keep the crowd energized. And again, we had a really strong game one, no letdowns, which can happen in matches, especially when you try to focus for such a long period of time playing a really high-notch club like Ohio State.
Ohio State, I mentioned that IPFW came out on fire in game one. Ohio State played as if they wanted to win too. I mean, they played hard. The intensity was there right from the opening serve. And again, you mentioned the crowd. Over 2,000 fans. Second time this year, we've had over 2,000 fans in the Gates Center. And this is game two. Now, what some of the viewers may not realize who didn't watch the match or weren't at the Gates Center, in game two, the Buckeyes were up 6-0 and 21-13. And then the blue and white come back.
Well, it's not that we put so much pressure on them. Obviously, the closer that we kept creeping to the score, trying to tie it up, it was 21-16, 21-18, now 22-18. We get a stuff block here. We just kept the ball in play, and you can see them start to crack a little bit, start to crumble a little bit. They were in disarray offensively. They didn't know what to do, and we were able to capitalize. When you score the 20th point in rally score, you have to minimize your errors between 20 to 30 because your errors become magnified, and that's what happened with Ohio State. They became tentative. We did not become tentative, and that is why we had such success coming back in game two.
Again, another long rally, and there it's long, and the lead's down to 2.
Josh Stewart came alive in game two. He didn't see many balls in game one, but he came alive in game two. There's a great block by Sidar and Brock on the quick set. Now we're tied at 24. I mean, again, nice aggressive serving, another hitting error. That's about 3 or 4 now for Ohio State at the 20-point mark. Another hitting error. I mean, you just can't do that, and to our credit, we kept the ball in play and we kept the pressure on them. And, we took advantage of their mistakes. Obviously, we turned a lot of balls. There's a nice backcourt dig by Brock, set to CJ with the termination on the right side. I mean, we were just flowing. And, again, 20 to 30, it's the toughest thing to close out a game. There's nothing, there's no secret to it. It's the toughest thing to close out any opponent in any game. We were very fortunate to come back. We worked really hard to make an amazing comeback down 6-7 points to win 30-28 in game two.
Game two, and then we went on to win game three, 30-24. CJ Macias with 18 kills. Brock Ulrich had 11 kills and I think 3 service aces. Josh Stewart also had 10 kills. 16 wins in a row. Sets up a big match. And we're going to take one other break. And when we come back, Ryan will talk about what's ahead this Friday. We'll talk about what else is going to take place as well. Again, you're watching Mastodon Spotlight. Back in a moment, right here on College 56 Sports.
Arnie's Army is back. The Mastodons are on the move with the best volleyball action in the Midwest. The Dons have a seasoned veteran lineup ready to do battle with the big guns in Division I volleyball. It's time to take the offensive, settle some scores, catch all the action of the next big volleyball battle at the Gates Center. Go Dons!
While progress should never come to a halt, there are many places it should never come to at all. So we work locally with communities, businesses, and people like you to save precious places around the world, forever. I'm Paul Newman. Help the Nature Conservancy save the last great places.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. We're talking IPFW athletics in general, IPFW men's volleyball in particular. Our special guest is Ryan Perrott, my old sidekick here at Channel 56, who's now Arnie Ball's right-hand man. 2 big wins at home last week over Lewis and Ohio State, and the table has now been set. Friday night, 7 o'clock here at the Heritage Sports Center. If you can't be here, tune into College 56 Sports. As you so aptly wrote down on a piece of paper when Steve Florio and I were in the post-match comments on Channel 56 Saturday night, the match of the year.
Right.
IPFW I don't know if the new rankings have come out, but finishing off the weekend, the Dons were 12th ranked in the country, 18-5 overall, 9-2 in MIVA play. Their opponents, the Ramblers of Loyola of Chicago, last I knew they were 10th in the country, 19-6 overall, and they are 9-1 in conference play. These two teams played back in Chicago, I'm going to guess about 6-7 weeks ago. From what I'm told, the games were competitive. You were there, but Loyola came out on top in all 3 games, won 3-0. What's going to happen Friday night?
The first time we played them was the match after Lewis, actually, in Chicago. And that was the night also that we changed our lineup. We moved C.J. Macias to the opposite position. He had been playing the left against Lewis. What's going to happen? I hope it's competitive. I really do. I think the reason why I said it was the match of the year, coming into this year, I knew how good Loyola was going to be. Obviously, they were going to vie for one of the top 3 positions in our conference, no question. Shane Davis, their head coach, has done a magnificent job with that team. He has done a magnificent job with that team, and I tell him that every single time I see him. I played against him when I was here. He's such a great competitor, a really good coach. He's got them lined up, obviously, for a great run here in the playoffs. Obviously, if we continue to do the things that we've been doing the last month and a half, serving and passing, dominating the net, our offensive game, obviously, the nice balance that we've had over the last 3-4 matches that we've had, obviously good backcourt defense, all the intangibles that go along with playing Loyola. The one thing about Loyola that I say, and I say this obviously with all great respect to that team, they're a different road team than they are a home team. At home, they are almost invincible. They live in this wonderful cage of volleyball with unbelievable atmosphere and energy that the crowd provides for them. When they go on the road, they're 2-6 on the road this year. They're a different team. Obviously, that doesn't take away from their personnel. They have a wonderful opposite, Chris Kozleric, a great setter, a couple good middles, but they're a different team on the road, and hopefully our crowd advantage, being that 7th man, if you will, can help us propel ourselves over the top against the Ramblers.
Real briefly, one more question on volleyball, and then we're going to talk about what else is happening here on campus. The match behind the match, and when I say that, you're going to have IPFW and Loyola on the court. Both head coaches are former setters. I don't know if anyone's even thought about this angle, except maybe for me, and I don't know why I'm thinking about it, but Shane Davis, the career assist setter at Loyola, and Arnie Ball had a great career at Ball State. As a player, they're matching wits, the chess match. The game is on.
Yeah, I don't know if that's maybe a fact. I never thought about it, actually. That's a good conspiracy theory, I guess, to start. Yeah, I've never really thought about it. I don't think many coaches worry about out-coaching the other in the sport of volleyball. I think the players do the talking themselves. As I'm so aptly reminded that we don't play for the kids. I mean, the kids play for themselves. It's great that we coach and put the X's and O's down, but we do our part during the week. The kids go out and play. So I don't think there's one advantage to have Shane against Coach Ball, going head to head. I think there are some great matchups. I think CJ and Chris Kozleric, their opposites, are going to be. You're going to see 2 great athletic individuals go head to head. Obviously, I think it's going to be very competitive.
Again, it's going to be a great match. If you can get out here at all at the Gates Center, let's pack the place, have our 3rd 2,000-plus crowd of the year, and I think that would be a record for IPFW men's volleyball. If you can't get to the Gates Center, tune into Channel 56 Friday night at 7 o'clock for that match. Real briefly, Ryan, we want to talk about what's ahead with some of the other sports.
Sure.
As we're taping this show on a Tuesday, it's a beautiful sunny day, a little bit cool, but IPFW baseball, the rematch with Dayton here in Fort Wayne, the return of Tony Vittorio for at least a game against Billy Gernon, baseball 11-11.
Yeah, baseball is playing great. They've carried over what they did last year into this season. They're playing also with a lot of confidence at 11-11. A couple big wins for them earlier on this year. Obviously, as soon as we're done taping here, I'm going to run over to the baseball diamond. It's also Student Athlete Recognition Day over there. So the guys are playing really hard. They're training really hard. Obviously, Coach Gernon has the team psyched up to play, a former coach here. It's great to see Tony back here, and obviously we wish him all the best over at Dayton. But we need to continue our streak alive here also.
That's true. And then later in the week, they'll also take on Bowling Green State. Women's softball, as we said, has been struggling. They're going to have some double headers over this next coming week. University of Detroit on Thursday, Friday they play Notre Dame College in a single game. Next Monday they're going to play Indiana Wesleyan in a doubleheader. And a week from today they play Butler in a doubleheader. All these games in Fort Wayne. Men's golf will be taking part in a tournament in at Wright State on the 9th and 10th of April. Tournament there. Women's golf team is playing in Cincinnati this week. The University of Cincinnati, University of Dayton Invitational today and tomorrow as we speak, as we're taping. Men's tennis is also back in action, and they're going to be taking on Valparaiso later this week at Valparaiso. And on Sunday they're going to be at University of Toledo. The women's tennis team, again, they are 15-10 on the year. They're going to be at Valparaiso today as we speak. And finally, the women's track and field team is doing very, very well, is going to be at Miami of Ohio this weekend for the Miami of Ohio Invitational.
All praise to our student athletes. They have done an amazing job, not only in the fall, but they've carried it over in the spring, not only in the classroom, but on the court, in the field, on the diamond. They've done a great job. Kudos to them.
Yeah, and how. So again, a lot of action taking place here at IPFW. If you can get out here to watch baseball, softball, tennis, whatever, please do so. And again, Friday night, can't stress it enough. Let's pack the Gate Center and see if IPFW can knock off Loyola of Chicago. That's it, Ryan. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll see you again next week. But until then, this is Mike Moss. Have a great week, and please continue to go Dons. As usual, another busy week on the athletic front this past week at IPFW. On this edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we're going to talk about what happened on the baseball field, the softball field, the tennis courts, the golf course, and the volleyball courts. Our special guest is women's head basketball coach Chris Paul, who's going to tell us what the Final Four was like in Boston about a week or so ago. It's Mastodon Spotlight. Stay tuned. It's coming up next right here on College 56 Sports.
Hey, college students, here's a little quiz.
How much of the actual cost of your tuition is paid by you?
Only 60 to 80%.
That's right. Some of the remaining money comes from another source.
Your alumni pay part of your tuition just like graduates before them paid a part of theirs.
So next time you run into a graduate from your college or university,
give him or her a pat on the back and a big thank you.
When alumni give back to their alma mater, their college can keep the success rolling.
Thanks to all of our alumni for your support.
We couldn't afford education without you.
Mom, Dad, you know we love kids, and I've made a decision that will totally change my life. Cameron's too. It's a huge responsibility, leading someone into, who knows, communication or science or math. That's what life's all about, right? Learning so you can pass on knowledge to younger minds. Dad, Mom, I want to be a teacher.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Mike Moss. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight, where we give it our best try to make an attempt to take an in-depth look at IPFW athletics. Our usual format calls for a review of what took place over the previous week. I also want to mention our special guest again is head coach Chris Paul from the women's basketball program, and he's going to listen to me talk about what took place. We start as usual with the alphabet, the letter B, and B normally stands for baseball. And at least at this time of the year, Billy Gernon's squad played a couple of games last week. One was at home against the Flyers from the University of Dayton. And it's a game that I think Billy and the team would like to forget because former IPFW head baseball coach Tony Vittorio must not have had something good for breakfast or whatever, because he implored his charges to get it on, so to speak, and boy, did they ever, to the tune of 28 runs and 25 hits. Final score, game played, I believe it was last Tuesday, was Dayton 28, IPFW 7. And that's baseball, not football, but that was a baseball score, and that loss hurt. And then the next day, April 5th, the team went to Bowling Green, Ohio to take on the Falcons from Bowling Green State, member of the Mid-American Conference. And I think the team was still feeling the effects of the Dayton shellacking, because the Falcons put it to IPFW as well, winning that contest by a score of 16-3. They pounded out 21 hits in that game to go along with their 16 runs. Two bright spots in that Bowling Green game for IPFW. Freshman outfielder Quentin Brown had his first collegiate home run. He went 3 for 4. And senior center fielder Ryan Keena went 2 for 4 as well. So in those two games, the team was outscored 44-10. And as we're taping this show on Tuesday, the team this afternoon is going to travel up to Mount Pleasant for a rematch with the Chippewas from Central Michigan, a team that IPFW defeated here in Fort Wayne just a couple of weeks ago. So they're going to play at Central Michigan today. They're going to play at Ball State on Wednesday, the 12th. And then this weekend they are home for back-to-back doubleheaders against Chicago State from the Mid-Con on Saturday. Doubleheader Saturday and a single game at noon on Sunday. The baseball team now is 11 up and 13 down on the young season. Briefly, men's golf team, we touched on it a little bit last week. They played in a tournament at Eastern Kentucky University, and they finished tied for 9th in that tournament. They are off this week. They are not off this week. They are at Wright State in Dayton this week for the Bullock Collegiate Classic. So we wish Jeff Marsh's men's team the best of luck there. From golf, let's turn our attention over to tennis. And the men's tennis team traveled to Valparaiso and on the 5th and took on the Crusaders and got whacked 6-1. Tough week for most of the athletic teams here on campus. The only win that IPFW's team could get was Herman Kuschke, the freshman, winning his singles match at number 4 singles. So, and then they also played the University of Toledo, and the Rockets won every match and won that match by a total of 7-0. So the men's tennis team is now 10-13 on the year, 0-3 in Mid-American Conference play. The other men's sport we'll talk about was men's volleyball. A tremendous match played last Friday night at the Hilliard Gate Sports Center. It was telecast here on Channel 56. It was the showdown for first place in the MIVA, and the Ramblers of Loyola of Chicago showed why they are 9th-ranked team in the country and why they are going to be the regular season champions of the Midwest Intercollegiate Volleyball Association. Over 2,100 fans came into the Gates Center, saw a great first game, and first game went IPFW's way 33-31, but then Loyola won the next 3 games by scores of 30-24, 30-27, and 30-26 to wrap up the regular season title. And the IPFW had their school record 16-match winning streak snapped. They have 2 more matches to complete the regular season this weekend. Penn State on Friday night in a match that we'll televise here on Channel 56. And then Rutgers Newark comes to town for senior night on Saturday night. Both of those matches at the Gate Sports Center starting at 7 o'clock. That's the men's sports. Briefly, let's talk about women's sports. Ladies golf team was on the road in Dayton, Ohio last week. Actually, Cincinnati, the University of Dayton, University of Cincinnati getting together to host a women's collegiate tournament. And IPFW finished 3rd in an 8-team field. And Nicole Geyer, playing very well, led the way. She was 4th individually with a 36-hole score of 161, followed by Abby Waltke, Allison Rathsman, Jackie Spees, and Stephanie Hops. The team score for 36 holes was 686. Again, IPFW's women's team finishing 3rd out of 8 that played in the UCUD Women's Collegiate. They are now going to play this week at Loyola University in a 36-hole tournament, so we wish them well as well. We turn our attention now to softball, and it's been a very tough year for head coach Keith Fisher and his staff and the squad. They've had a couple of injuries and running into some tough luck and some awfully good opposition. They played a couple of double headers. On the 6th of April, they took on the University of Detroit Mercy from the Horizon League and lost both games. Game 1, 5-0. Game 2, 12-0. And on the 10th, they took on, it was on Monday, they took on Indiana Wesleyan in a doubleheader here in Fort Wayne. They won the opener 2-1, dropped the nightcap by a score of 3-2. They're going to play Butler in a doubleheader later this week, and they're also going to play Notre Dame College. They were supposed to play them last week. Weather washed that out, so they're going to make that one up this coming Thursday. They are now 4-24 on the softball season. Women's tennis took on Valparaiso and got beat 4-3. The Dons won 2 of the 3 doubles matches to get the doubles point, and then Ashley Colson and Beth Miller won singles matches, but they only won 2 out of 6, and they dropped the match to the Crusaders 4-3. They are now 15-11 on the campaign. And then the final sport we're going to talk about is women's track and field. Mike Frucci took his women's squad to Miami of Ohio for their invitational this past weekend. Ashley Ritchie, the wonder runner from Leo High School, continues to excel. She posted a time of 17:36 in the 5,000 meter run. That's another school record that she set. And other school records were set in the 400 meter hurdles, the high jump, and the 4x400 relays. So this weekend, the women's team is going to participate up in East Lansing, Michigan at the Michigan State University Invitational. So women's track doing very, very well. That's a review of what took place over the last week. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to chat with women's basketball head coach Chris Paul and find out what being at the Final Four was like. That and more when Mastodon Spotlight returns in a moment, right here on College 56 Sports.
The 3rd annual Judy Marsh Memorial Golf Classic is just around the corner. This year's event is June 2nd at Deer Track Golf Course. Golf, green peas, cart, range balls, team photos, lunch and dinner, and prizes. This fundraiser helps support IPFW men's and women's golf teams and local charities. Sponsorship and participation opportunities are available. Pick up a brochure or for more information call 260-410-6511. The Judy Marsh Memorial Golf Classic, June 2nd at Deer Track Golf Course.
One breakthrough machine gave us insight into the bones, as another did for the heart, and another for the brain. Now doctors are using a new machine to practice medicine and save lives. The difference is, it's one you can use too. When you log on to medlineplus.gov from the National Library of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health, you're tapping into the largest, most comprehensive medical website in the world. Medlineplus.gov, the website doctors prescribe.
Back to Mastodon Spotlight. It may sound a little crazy to be talking women's basketball since we just recently completed the 2005-2006 campaign, but basketball we are going to talk about, and with us is the head coach of IPFW Women's Hoops, Chris Paul. And I appreciate you coming back, Chris. One of the reasons that I asked you to come on this week is you and Charity had a chance to travel to Boston
Arnie's
for
Army
the Final
is back.
Four about a week or so ago, and you saw 3 exciting games, especially the championship game with ACC foes Duke and Maryland, and setting this up, so to speak. I remember when Brenda Fries, you and Bruce had just taken over here, starting the women's program, and or I should say, trying to build the women's program. And one of the first schools you played was University of Minnesota. And at the time, Brenda Fries was the head coach.
Correct.
And then she was only at Minnesota for a year, but had a winning record there. and then she was offered a plum job at Maryland.
Right.
And lo and behold, what did she do this year? Come from behind, force overtime, and win the national championship over the Duke Blue Devils. But let's talk about what the Final Four was like, what the whole trip was about, and not just watching 3 basketball games,
Right.
but the other interactions that took place.
Well, it's the second year we've gone to the Final Four. We went down last year when it was at Indianapolis. And that was a little different because we drove down, stayed a couple days, drove home, and then we drove back, because it's so close. This way, with it being out in Boston, obviously we're not going to drive back and forth. So we took off the 31st and stayed out there all the way through the championship game. So we were there for 6 days and 5 nights. People always talk how are the games, and the games are great. But it's not really about the games. It's about the interaction with the coaches. It's about going to the clinics. They have a lot of on-court demonstrations, so you pick up drills and techniques that other coaches around the country are using. You hear a lot of other coaches speak about how they're running their program, what they're doing, what they like, what they don't like, what they think works and what they know doesn't work. And it's connections that you make throughout the coaching community that's the most important part.
When you talk about what makes things work, you're not just talking about the X's and O's on the practice floor, but you're talking about maybe other preparations, traveling, scheduling, recruiting, and other things as well?
How to handle players, how to handle certain situations, off-court situations. If you've got a player that does X, how are you going to handle it? Maybe they tried to handle it this way and it didn't work, so they would recommend trying to handle it another way. All those kind of things that you just sort of, you take notes and you file in the back of your mind so that if you ever run across that situation, you know that maybe these are the steps you need to take. And the games are great. Excuse me. Unfortunately, they don't give you great seats. We're at the Fleet Center and we're up in the balcony. But you can still see. But it's really the atmosphere, and the camaraderie that there's 326 Division I coaches. But their whole staff is there. You've also got Division II coaches, Division III coaches, NAIA coaches. So there are a lot of coaches that are out there just to be there.
I'm surprised NAIA being able to be there as well. I wasn't expecting to hear that.
Well, it's open. What they can do is they can apply for a membership just like anybody else. So they can go down there and go to some of the games. Now, a lot of them don't go because their budgets aren't the budgets aren't big enough. We're very fortunate that the school allows us to take this opportunity, and what they call it is professional development. We set aside an X amount in our budget for personal development, and that's basically what it is. But there's all kinds of coaches down there, and a lot of them are either looking to enhance their program or they're looking to go someplace else. And you'll see 4, 5, 6 bulletin boards all over with resumes posted of people who are either looking or trying to get into it. There's a lot of people that go that aren't even coaches as of now because they're trying to get on staff somewhere. So, there's thousands of people down there.
I'll be darned. Can you tell us about and did you get a chance to rub elbows with any of the so-called big-time coaches in the power conferences?
Well, yeah. We've made a lot of contacts throughout the year. We spent some time with Christy Curry, who was, formerly at Purdue, now at Texas Tech. We spent a lot of time where we had dinner with 2 assistants from Illinois. We play them next season. And actually, Illinois' associate head coach is Brenda Freese's sister. So we're talking Friday night, we're having dinner and everything, and little did she know that her sister was actually going to win the national championship a few nights later. But Michigan, we talked a little bit with Michigan. We talked, with Xavier and with Bowling Green and Ball State, and we just talk with everybody, and it's not so much X's and O's or anything like that. It's just, how are you doing? How your program's doing great. If there's anything we can do for you in the future, let us know. And that's where we need to get as a program so that, we can rely on other coaches around the country and they can rely on us because it's a tough profession and coaches need to stick together.
I know it's a ways off, but from this gathering, I assume now that you and Charity and hopefully another assistant to be named or
Correct.
chosen at some point down the road. We'll be able to take some of these ideas. I know it's a ways off because Midnight Madness isn't going to come until mid-October.
Right.
But what ideas can you implement right now that you learned from Boston?
Well, I'm not sure I saw any ideas that we're going to implement right away. I know what we're going to do. When I hear some of what was a positive is, we talked with a lot, and we'd sit down and they'd say, well, they've got these problems, or these kids are leaving, so they've got to try to fill these spots, and they're scrambling. We're not in that position now. This is the first time in 5 years where we're not losing a player. They all want to be here, which is positive. Tomorrow's our late signing period. We're anticipating, I'd be very disappointed if we don't, we're anticipating 2 signees tomorrow, and we will be done. And that's the first time, once again, in 5 years that we're going to be done on the signing date. So now we can start moving forward. What we were really trying to pick out or pick from some of these coaches is, how do you go after the juniors? How do you go after the sophomores? Because that's where we need to get as a program. We've always been scrambling to try to fill a roster towards the middle of the summer or late summer, and now we've basically caught up. So now we've got to hit the junior market, hit the sophomores, and it's very tricky because the NCAA doesn't allow you to do a lot of things with that market. So we're just trying to pick ideas that have worked for other programs and how we can implement those, because we all know we're only as good as the players we have.
It's amazing how intricate the process is for developing and maintaining a program.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about, you look at seniors, you look at juniors, now you look at sophomores. Is sophomores the lowest class of high school player that you are able to look at? I mean, legally?
You can always look. You just can't contact them.
Okay.
What we need to know is we need to have that database of 07s, 08s, 09s that are out there. Mainly what we talked about is a 3-hour radius. That's what we're looking for, from 3 hours from Fort Wayne out, and start really cultivating that market so that the freshmen around the area know what IPFW is doing. And then they become sophomores and they continue to follow, then juniors, and maybe we make offers as juniors, we sign them as seniors, and then we go right back and we just continue to hit them when they're young. We just haven't been able to do that in the past because we've been trying to build one from scratch, and we've been in scramble mode, and I feel like we finally caught up.
So now are you and Charity able to take a deep breath of sorts and maybe get a day or two off in the next 3 months?
Well, what we did, I gave Charity about 12 hours. I gave Charity about 12 hours. We got back from Boston about 3 o'clock, and we didn't come into the office. But then on Thursday, we hit our workouts. And we started workouts last week, Thursday and Friday. We'll work out this week. We'll work out the next 2 weeks. We'll take exam week off. We'll take another week off. And then our summer workouts will start up. So, no, not really. I mean, and that's a good thing, because I feel like we're going in the right direction. We've always been sort of doing this, but then branching off and trying to catch up. Now I feel like we're going straight ahead, and we really want to keep the momentum going. So, to answer your question, and if Charity's watching, no, there's no days off anytime in the future.
Well, let's take a brief look at what's ahead now for IPFW women's basketball. You mentioned that nobody is leaving. You hope to have 4 new people.
Right.
2 that you did sign in the fall.
Right.
Are you able to mention their names?
Yes. We signed 2 people in the fall. We signed Andrea Morrow, a 6'3" post player from Van Wert, Ohio, and we signed Lieselot Malfate, a 6'2" post player from Belgium, in the fall. So we've got 6'3" and 6'2" coming in to add to what we had, because that's the part that we still have to work on. I feel like our guard play is pretty solid. We've got to find a couple that will step up and say, this is my position, so that we can score from the block. We're hoping to sign 2 more tomorrow. We'll keep our fingers crossed, but I feel pretty positive about that. And when I say we're not losing anybody, we're losing 3 great seniors. I don't want anybody to watch this and think that I don't think that we're losing great kids. But our top 5 scorers are returning. Our top 6 in minutes are all returning. And we don't have anybody walking in and saying, this isn't the place for me. I want to go someplace else. Even the ones who didn't play towards the end of the season, were the first ones in the office saying, hey, when can we get started again? which really tells me that there's a positive vibe about women's basketball, and we've got to continue with it.
I know during the season itself, you're only allotted 20 hours a week.
Right.
In the off season, how does that change?
Well, we get 8. We get 8 hours. 4 of them can be with basketball, and we can have everybody together during that basketball time. So what we've been trying to do is, for example, yesterday we did an hours of basketball. Charity did 20 minutes of station with the 4s and 5s. I did 20 minutes of station with the guards. Shot some free throws. We switched. I took the post. She took the guards. Shot some free throws. And then we finished with 10 minutes of live half court. And then after that, then they went and worked an hour with Performance 1. So they're working on their plyometrics, their lifting, their conditioning.
And that doesn't count in the 8 hours?
That counts towards the 8 hours.
It does count?
It does. Okay. It does. So we've got to track all that. And that's what they'll be doing in the summer, because Charity and I and our coaching staff can't be with them during the summer. But Performance 1 and Sport 1 can be. So they're the ones that will be working with them throughout the summer. And we're going to have 4 weeks, take 2 weeks off, 6 weeks, take a couple weeks off, then school's going to start. But we'll have 10 solid weeks where they'll be going through Performance 1 in the summer.
And it may sound like a crazy question, but you know that I'm crazy. Even though you and your staff cannot have contact with them, they're still able to use the facilities, or do they have to work out off campus?
No, they can use the facilities. Because they'll be in summer, they'll be enrolled in summer classes.
Oh, okay.
So they're a regular student. They can use the facilities, and they can come in and talk to us when we're in our office, but we just can't be out there watching them, that's all. And we can't mandate it. We can only highly recommend that they do it.
How many of the kids are going to take summer classes? Because that brings up another interesting thought, because the athletes are gone so much during the course of the season. It's kind of nice if they're able to take a class or two to help ease the pressure from the actual fall and winter semesters.
Right.
And
we recommend that they all do. They're all going to, and all of them at some point are going to be here this summer, which is great, because this is really when you build yourself as a player, when you have individual time in the summer. The only 2 that are going to be gone all summer are Julie Ann Hone, she's going back to Germany, and Tina Moen's going back to Norway. And I have a tough time telling them, being from another country, they can't go home. But the other ones are going to be here for the most part, and that doesn't mean they're not going to go home and spend some time with their family, because I think that's important. But I also think it's important for them to be here for the camaraderie, and to start to build that team unity and carry it on. So they're going to be here some will take 3 hours first semester or summer session, 3 hours second summer session. Some will take 6 first summer session, none second. But they will all be taking summer classes to try to catch up.
We've got about 2 minutes left. I know the schedule is not etched in granite just yet for next year, but can you tell us about some of the opponents that you know we're going to be playing?
Sure. We're going to open the season with a tournament at UNC Asheville. So there'll be a tournament there. We'll come home the following weekend. We'll have a tournament at Ball State. So we'll have back-to-back tournaments with competition that I feel very comfortable with. In the past we've opened with, we've had Kentucky and Louisville and Notre Dame and Purdue and Minnesota. We're still going to have those teams. We still have Indiana, which we're going to play here at the Coliseum in the Hoopla event. We still have Illinois. We still have South Carolina. So we still have some big teams. But I also feel like we now have a schedule where we're not overwhelmed early. We'll have those 2 teams, those 2 tournaments early. Then we'll come home for some home games, then go back on the road. But it's spaced out. It's a lot more manageable. Right now we're at 13 home games and 15 road games, so I feel pretty comfortable with that. We're going to play most of the independents home and home, so you get that conference feel again. I wish we were playing Corpus Christi again. I'll miss playing it, but at least we ended on a positive note. So it's a challenging schedule, but one that I think we can do some things with.
Question came in my ear. The fact that we're still not in a conference, how is that affecting the scheduling?
Well, it does affect the schedule. It's difficult. But the independents have gotten together and we've created a scheduling agreement. So now North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Texas Pan-Am, New Jersey Tech, we're going to play all those home and home. So in January and mostly in February, we know we're going to play there. We know they're coming here. South Dakota State as well. I don't know whether I mentioned this. But that picks up, that alleviates us trying to scramble for games late in the year. Now it's just a matter of trying to find games early and get home games and try to raise some money for the university because we got to have X amount of guarantee games in there as well. So, you know, the struggle is November and December just to get to January and February. But I think it looks pretty good next year.
Other than that, just a ho-hum season. Not a whole heck of a lot to do. Or?
No, coaches don't do anything. We don't. We just play golf and watch TV. But it's exciting. You know, we're building something pretty special, and I'm looking forward to September.
Well, I appreciate you coming over here. And,
no problem.
And again, I'm glad you had a great time in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have Boston cream pie while you were there?
You know, I didn't, but I had a lot of Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts is on every corner in Boston, unfortunately, and I love Dunkin' Donuts, so I had a lot.
We wish you well, and we will
you.
see you come fall.
Yeah, thank you.
We've been chatting with IPFW head women's basketball coach Chris Paul, and we appreciate Chris for coming over. We appreciate you for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW athletics, and we invite you to come back again next week for another edition of the program. But until then, this is Mike Maas. Thanks for tuning in. Please have a great week, and please continue to go Dons. The spring athletics season is quickly coming to a close here at IPFW. On this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll tell you what's going on with a number of the sports: baseball, softball, tennis, golf, track and field, and men's volleyball. Our special guest once again is Ryan Perrott, the assistant volleyball coach on the men's team for IPFW. Again, it's Mastodon Spotlight. Stay tuned. It's coming up next right here on College 56 Sports.
That vote was all right. You know, if she continues to spill product at a rate of 3 per hour, unit cost, say 60 cents. Factor in breakage, downtime, lost sales, you're looking at $2,400 a month. Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
The third annual Judy Marsh Memorial Golf Classic is just around the corner. This year's event is June 2nd at Deer Track Golf Course. Golf, green fees, cart, range balls, team photos, lunch and dinner, and prizes. This fundraiser helps support IPFW men's and women's golf teams and local charities. Sponsorship and participation opportunities are available. Pick up a brochure, or for more information, call 260-410-6511. The Judy Marsh Memorial Golf Classic, June 2nd at Deer Track Golf Course.
Hi everybody, I'm Mike Maas. Welcome once again to Mastodon Spotlight, where we make an attempt, and I say an attempt, at letting you know what's going on with IPFW athletics. As I said a few moments ago, it's hard to believe that the spring athletic season is quickly winding down and coming to a close. Some of the athletic teams have already completed their seasons, and we'll briefly talk about them today. Others still have action to take place yet, and the first of those sports we're going to talk about is baseball. Head coach Billy Gernon's squad is having a decent year, going up against some tough Division I opponents. This past week they played a number of games, and the first game we're going to talk about took place on April the 19th. The team traveled to South Bend to take on the nationally ranked Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. A little tidbit, over about the last 12 or 14 years, the only college baseball team east of the Mississippi River to qualify for the College World Series has been Notre Dame. And the past week, IPFW traveled to X Stadium to take on the Fighting Irish. And IPFW gave Notre Dame as much as they could handle. We're going to pick up action. We actually have a highlight where IPFW was batting in the top half of the 6th inning. They were trailing 2-0, but they had 2 runners on base, and Ryan Keena came to the plate, and here's the set and the pitch, and first pitch is down low for a ball. So the count now is 2 balls and 2 strikes. Again, there's 2 runners on at first and third, nobody out. At this point, IPFW not only is trailing 2-0, but they don't even have a base hit yet. But that's about to change. And there we go. There is a blast. It is deep to left. It is back. It is high, and it is gone. A home run for Ryan Keena. And you can see his teammates crossing home plate. Keena touches the plate. And at that point, there we go. IPFW scored 3 runs, took a 3-2 lead. Again, that was the top of the 6th inning. Notre Dame, to their credit, came back with the run in the bottom of the 6th, so it was tied 3-3 going into the bottom of the 10th inning. And unfortunately for the Mastodons, the Irish did score a run in the bottom of the 10th on a sacrifice fly, and the final score was Notre Dame 4, IPFW 3. Tough loss, but boy, what a great experience. Notre Dame, after that victory, improved their record to 29-8. So for IPFW to take them to extra innings, not a bad feat. And I think I'm being told they were 16th ranked in the country as well. So a very good outing for IPFW, even though they came up short on the scoreboard 4-3. They then traveled to Bowling Green, Kentucky over the weekend and took on the High Toppers of Western Kentucky. They split a doubleheader on Saturday, winning the opening game 4-3, losing the nightcap 9-3. And then in the final game of that series on Sunday, Western Kentucky broke a 4-4 tie with a solo home run, and then they ended up defeating IPFW 13-4. So at this point of the season, the baseball team has a record of 16-19. This week they're going to be taking on Toledo at Toledo, member of the Mid-American Conference, and then they'll be home Thursday against Goshen College, Friday a doubleheader against Grace College, and on Sunday they'll be taking on Defiance College. All 4 of those games at Mastodon Field this coming weekend. So at 16-19, perhaps a good chance to get back to the 500 mark by the end of the weekend. From baseball, let's turn our attention to golf. Both the men's and women's golf teams are finishing up their season. Hard to believe it, but they only play like 5 matches in the spring. And this past weekend, the men's team traveled to Dayton, Ohio at the University of Dayton Spring Invite. And IPFW finished their season placing 9th out of 12 teams. Cleveland State won the event. Individually, Andy Campbell finished tied for 23rd individually. He had scores of 78, 76, and 83, a 54-hole total of 237. He tied for 23rd. Nathan Hoff finished tied for 34th at 241. Zach Buchan finished tied for 36th at 242. They were the leaders there. Again, the men's golf season is now history. We'll talk more about that in depth in a later program. Women's team also closed out their spring portion of the 2005-2006 season last week, traveling to Toledo to take part at the Rocket Spring Classic. And IPFW finished their 54-hole score 1,012. Eastern Michigan won it with an even 900. Abby Waltke had a nice tournament, finishing in 17th place individually. She had rounds of 83, 77, and 79. Her 54-hole score total was 239. Jackie Spees was tied for 33rd at 250, and Nicole Geyer finished at 257. That was good for 42nd place individually. And again, the women's team has now completed their play for the season. From golf, let's turn to softball. It's been a tough year for Keith Fisher's squad, but they are still giving it their best effort. Last week, a number of games, starting off with the game down in Bloomington against IU. Tough 6th inning by Indiana. Final result was 11-3, the Hoosiers over the Mastodons. On the positive side, Abby Liddon and Kayla Vargo and Jenna Beachy all went 1 for 3 in the contest, and Stone had the lone RBI. But again, 11-3, IPFW losing to Big Ten Indiana University. Then a couple of days later, they went to Indianapolis, took on the IUPUI Jaguars in the Mid-Con. And the first game, it's actually one game, IPFW won 3-1, and just went a long time. And Jenna Beachy scored what turned out to be the lead run. And Katie Aspergen got the win. And they were going to play a second game, but because the first game went so long, they weren't able to do it. So they then traveled 2 days later to Valparaiso and played a doubleheader. They defeated the Crusaders 4-3 in game 1, lost a nightcap 1-0. So they are being competitive, even though they're not getting some victories. I want to talk briefly about the fact that there are 3 players that made all academic independent, and we want to say congratulations to seniors Jenna Beachy and Heather DeVore, as well as sophomore Jenna Connolly, for excelling in the classroom as well as on the softball diamond. So kudos for that. And then this past weekend, the softball team was down in Dayton and took on the University of Dayton Flyers. Doubleheader on Saturday. Dayton won by scores of 4-1 and 7-6. And then they played another doubleheader on Monday. Game 1 went to Dayton 2-0, but IPFW won the nightcap in 8 innings, 11-10. And Casey Stone drove in the winning run in that contest. So the season's going to wind down and be completed later this week for softball. They're going to be playing at Ball State and at Oakland, a couple of doubleheaders this week. They are 11-31 as we speak, and we'll tell you how they finish up on our next program. From softball, we turn to tennis. The men's and women's teams completing the regular season portion. The men's team took on the University of Buffalo last Sunday, and Buffalo's been a tough opponent throughout the brief history of the program, and Buffalo defeated IPFW by a score of 5-2. IPFW won a doubles match as Daniel Jackson and Nathan Jones won their match 8-5. And in singles, Carlos Gonzalez was victorious, winning his match in 3 sets. So the regular season was finished now. There's one match left at least, maybe more if they get lucky in the postseason. Men's team 11-15, and they'll be playing in the Mid-American Conference postseason tournament at Toledo this week. The women's team actually completed their season by playing in the independent tournament that was here at IPFW, and they won their first match, defeating Texas Pan American 4-3, and they ran into some problems against Northern Colorado and Texas A&M Corpus Christi, but the women's tennis team finished 3rd in the independent tournament, and their season is now complete, and they finished with a record of 17-13, so congratulations to women's tennis for having a winning season. And then we go from tennis briefly to track and field. Women's team was split last weekend. Part of the team went to Eastern Michigan, and part of the team went to the Kansas Relays. And at Eastern Michigan, freshman Brooke Newman set a school record in the pole vault at 9 feet 6 1/4 inches. And at the Kansas Relays, Ashley Ritchie kept running extremely well, set a school record in the 10,000 meter run, breaking her previous mark by over 20 seconds. Her time was 36:32 and change. She finished 2nd individually. They'll compete next week at the Hillsdale College Junior Relays in Eastern Michigan. That's all the sports covered except for men's volleyball, but we're going to take a time out. When we come back, Ryan Perrott will join me, and we're going to talk about the opening match in MIVA tournament play as the Dons took on Carthage, and we'll show you highlights from that match and tell you about what's ahead as well. Again, it's after the break. This is Mastodon Spotlight on College 56 Sports.
While progress should never come to a halt, there are many places it should never come to at all. So we work locally with communities, businesses, and people like you to save precious places around the world, forever. I'm Paul Newman. Help the Nature Conservancy save the last great places.
Do you know how many kids are risking their health by eating unhealthy foods, stuffing themselves, and not getting any exercise?
Oh, thank goodness. You got here just in time. Where's the problem? In there.
Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?
Here, try this. The original fast food.
Doctors know that our children need a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, high-fiber vegetarian foods to help them grow up healthy. Call for a free booklet or visit kidsgethealthy.org.
Welcome back to a wild and woolly set here at College 56 Sports. This is Mastodon Spotlight. Allegedly, my name is Mike Maz. We now bring into the conversation, for better or for worse, men's assistant volleyball coach Ryan Perrott. Rock, you had to put up with the first part of this program, and you've kept your composure, and I can't believe how well you did it, as it's been a crazy scene here this morning on campus. But let's talk volleyball, which is your expertise. The postseason play began last Saturday night, and action took place here at the Hilliard Gate Sports Center. The opponent, the Carthage Redmen, ironically the first team that IPFW played way back when they started the season with a match against Carthage. Carthage won their way here by winning a couple of matches in the other division of the MIVA. And I know they defeated Clark, and I don't know if it was Juniata or who else they played, but they won 2 matches already just to get into the so-called, I don't want to say big dance because that's what your team is striving to get, but
the Division I tier.
Division, yeah. And so they came in here 12-12, and literally, I know Ken Horman and I talked about it briefly on the radio prior to the start of the match. They had nothing to lose because nobody was expecting them to do anything. IPFW had a great finish to their regular season, came in with a record of 20-6, and winning 18 of their last 19 matches. So Carthage had nothing to lose. They came in here, and they started the match out. They hung tough in game 1 for quite a while, but then the difference in talent between a Division I school and a Division III school became evident, and ultimately IPFW won the match by scores of 30-21, 30-24, and 30-10. Talk about what the preparations were like for this first match in postseason.
Well, we approach this match just like any other match, to be honest with you. We prepare for ourselves and ourselves alone. You can only take care of what's on your side of the floor. So we prepared the week leading up to that match. We took a couple days off at the beginning of the week, came in, had 3 good practices leading up to the Carthage match. The toughest match to play in the playoffs is the first round. The quarterfinal is really difficult because you're expected to win, and when you have a team that comes into your place ready to play and have nothing to lose, they can just let it all hang out. We came out well in both games 1 and 2, got off to really good starts. I think a 10-4 in game 1, 11-4 in game 2, something along those lines, and then complacency set in, I think, a little bit for us. You know, kind of midway through each of those first 2 games before we decided, obviously, to turn it back on and finish them off. The first 2 games, obviously, Mike Dyga did a great job for us in game 3. I think he served 10 successive balls in a row, and we won 30-10. But the preparation leading up was the same as it always has been throughout the course of the year. Focus on ourselves, focus on our ball handling, serving and passing especially, and pick it up on the defensive end.
Was there any concern at all of being complacent due to the fact that you defeated Carthage 3-0 to start the season, and B, I should say, again, here we go, Division I against Division III? Any thought?
No, nothing of that nature. You know, it's the playoffs, and the majority of our guys, I think, even perhaps might have even forgotten that we had played Carthage earlier this year. That's how long our season has been. And they're a good team. Obviously, they gave us a nice, tough battle here, our very first match of the year. And we knew they were a very good team with a couple good volleyball players, solid volleyball players, athletic kids that could pose some difficulty. But no, we knew that they would be very formidable, and obviously we have enough respect for that team not to overlook them, thinking about either Mercyhurst or Ball State in the other quarterfinal that we'd match up with in the semifinals. So no, we gave a lot of respect to Carthage coming in.
We've got some highlights that we'd like to bring you now from the match against Carthage on Saturday night. And you'll see IPFW in the white jerseys and some slow-mo action there, Carthage in the red. And Ryan, go ahead and talk about what you're seeing on the screen.
Well, we had worked leading up to the match against Carthage, getting back to the basics of the game, serving and passing. Obviously, the match against Loyola here, we weren't as crisp as we had been the past month and a half to up to 2 months or so. So Colin Lundeen did a nice job with his jump serving. Obviously, CJ brought a lot of heat from the baseline. And as I mentioned, Mike Daiga came off the bench in the third and served 10 successive balls in a row with his jump float serve. There's Colin setting things up in the middle for Josh Stewart. The bread and butter of this team for us has been establishing our middle early, getting the blockers to try to defend Josh Stewart and Sidar Sikcha. Obviously, when that happens, they get a lot of the attention. Then it's able to open up things up for us on each side for either CJ or Brock Ulrich or Josh Collins. So our ball distribution was pretty good. We thought on last Saturday against Carthage, obviously we know we still have to execute better. I don't think we played that complete game like we wanted to. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more difficult come Ball State on Thursday at Loyola, but we know that we still have to execute a little bit better, get a little crisper in terms of our offensive flow, and especially with our attitude in the backcourt to pick up some more balls, play better defense that we have been, get a little more consistency in our game.
There's another Lundeen short set, and Kent and I have talked about the fact this year that for some reason there's just a lot of chemistry between Colin Lundeen, the setter, and Sidar Sikcha in the middle. Opposing teams look for CJ Macias on the outside, but when Colin does the short set to Sidar, and occasionally also the short set to Josh Stewart in the middle, more often than not, good things have happened this year.
Well, we've had good team chemistry throughout, and Josh Stewart has come a long way in terms of his offensive game. With Sidar's experience, he's been able to carry himself throughout the course of the season. I think both of those guys are hitting over 400, I think, for the year. But yeah, we've had really good team chemistry. Obviously, a lot of that has to stem from our passing. Josh Collins, Brock Ulrich, Mike Marisi have done a phenomenal job with their ball handling, able to pass the ball dead center of the floor. So Collins able to run our middle and obviously to get the other guys involved.
Team's passing well, serving well, but they're also blocking well. That's been a staple of IPFW for as long as I can remember. I think even before you came here to play. And briefly, as we're seeing some more highlights, Ryan, talk about the play of Mike Marisi as a libero.
Mike's been instrumental throughout the course of the season. He during our 2-month span of not losing a match, he was absolutely off the charts. His confidence sky high. He's improved his defensive game tremendously. His hustle obviously is spectacular, really built short to the floor, can cover a lot of ground. But his ball handling has been phenomenal. A lot of pressures on the libero to handle the very first ball that comes over the net on the free ball.
Dig right there.
And there's another great play there by Mike. And he's done his job throughout the course of the season at a very high level. As I say, he's flowing with confidence in terms of his game. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating, not being able to play or dig balls in the backcourt as often as you can, but he's done a phenomenal job. His ball handling has been spectacular, and he's pretty much the leader in terms of our backcourt defense for our team.
And there is a put away there. Again, the final score, 30-21, 30-24, 30-10. CJ Macias led the way with 15 kills. He was the only down in double figures kill-wise. Josh Collins, one of your Canadian brethren, had 8 kills. Brock Ulrich had 7. Sidar Sikcha with 6. Colin Lundeen from the center position had 35 assists. And we look at some other numbers, 26 digs. And Colin Lundeen had 6. Mike Marisi had 5. Brock Ulrich had 5. And then the blocks, 3 solo blocks and 24 block assists. And in a 3-game a 3-game match, that's not all bad.
Serving and blocking are really directly correlated to one another. We've been such a very good serving team throughout the course of the year. What happens is when you serve the ball aggressively, you take the other team out of their 3-man option. And when you start minimizing their options, blocking becomes a little bit easier. Now, obviously, we're a good technical team in terms of getting over the net, reading really well, but serving and blocking are directly related.
Well, the quarterfinals are now history, and now later this week, the team goes to Loyola of Chicago. Semifinal play late Thursday afternoon, early Thursday evening, and for the 3rd time this season, you get to take on the Ball State Cardinals. Now, match number 1 was a match we televised on Channel 56 back on February 17th in front of over 2,100 fans, and we won the match 3-1. And then a big game at Muncie on February 18th, or March 18th, I should say. And again, IPFW victorious, winning 3-1. It's always difficult to play a team 3 times in the same year, be it volleyball or basketball or whatever the sport, short of baseball. What are preparations going to be like this week? Because I know Arnie told us on the radio in the post-game report that he was committing the Cardinals in, saying he had already started prepping for Ball State, anticipating that they would knock off Mercyhurst in their quarterfinal.
Right, preparation will stay the same, believe it or not. But you know, at this time of the year, there's not much you can do to improve your skill level. There's not much you can do. You can prepare individually and you can prepare corporately. Now, I'm not saying you can't refine or redefine your game, freshen things up a little bit, get a little crisper in terms of serve, receive, that kind of thing, get better attitudinally in the backcourt defense for us as a team. But nothing's going to change. You know, we've played that team twice already this year with good success against them. Both those matches, I think, were 2 of the 3 matches that we've played complete volleyball matches from head to toe. Nothing's going to change. We're going to go in there to the match in the semifinal and hopefully continue to do the things that have gotten us to where we have been throughout the course of the season. We're going to go back, we're going to serve aggressively, we're going to eliminate their options, we're going to take away things from their outsides, and especially their opposite, Meyer, who's a tremendous volleyball player. The last time we played them in Muncie, we blocked 23.5 volleyballs. I mean, there's not much you can ask for. We just want to execute at a high level.
Coming into play last weekend nationally, C.J. Macias was 2nd in the entire country in kills per game, averaging over 5.5 kills. It's no secret that Ball State is going to gear perhaps their defense to stopping C.J.
Right.
So the old axiom, they're going to play on C.J. so others have to perform for IPFW to be victorious. If you had to name one player besides C.J. who has to really be on their game Thursday night?
I think it's a unit. I really do. I think it's all 6. And Ball State hasn't changed their philosophy from the first 2 games that we played. Everybody knows CJ is going to get his share of the kills. Everybody knows that. You know, some teams allow that to happen. Some teams don't allow that to happen. We're going to go in and continue to do what we're doing. We're going to pass the ball well, hopefully establish our middle blockers. When that happens, obviously that gets to open up things for the pins. Both Brock and Josh in both matches, Brock Ulrich and Josh Collins, have played tremendous volleyball in both the matches that we played against Ball State. They've been able to pass. They've gotten into it offensively. Their blocking has been actually excellent against Meyer on the right side. So when we get all that stuff established, I don't think it's going to be one player more so than any. Obviously, you'd like consistency from the setting position, from the passing position. Obviously, the middles have to get involved. But it's going to be a collective group effort in order for us to be successful against Ball State.
Let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's say IPFW is successful, so they get back to the championship match as they were in a year ago. Let's assume that Loyola, playing at home in that little tin box, knocks off Ohio State. Loyola, IPFW, round 3. This time the roles are reversed because the Ramblers have defeated IPFW twice this year. But what a carrot on the end of the string there, because the winner of that match goes to the Final Four guaranteed. Let's look ahead. Let's assume that IPFW wins Thursday. What has to happen Saturday for IPFW to make it to the Final Four?
Well, I think there are 2, if not 3, big differences from this year as compared to last year. Obviously, this year the tournament format is a Thursday Saturday. So it gives us rest and preparation for the final. Last year, I think it killed us. We ran out of gas going into Ohio State. Number two is when we play Loyola a third time, I think a lot of pressure will be on them. Obviously, we beat them last year in the semifinals. They wanted the home court advantage this year. They got the home court advantage for the tournament. They've beaten us twice this year, two really competitive close matches. So a lot of pressure will be on them. Number three is, as we've always had done when we play in the final, I think the experience from our freshmen that played last year and the guys that were at the tournament last year know what it takes now in order to get over the hump.
We wish you and the team well, and hopefully next week we can talk about a trip to the Final Four.
That would be nice. Thanks for having me.
Thank you much. That's it for this edition of Mastodon Spotlight. I want to thank Ryan Perrott for coming over. Thank you for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW Athletics. Next week we'll wrap up most of the spring sports, but that is next week. And until then, this is Mike Moss. Thanks for tuning in. Please have a great week and continue to go Dons. Believe it or not, the 2005-2006 school year is now over here at IPFW. On our final edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll take a look back at all the sports that took place here on campus. Our special guest is Director of Athletics, Mark Pope. Our program is called Mastodon Spotlight. We're finishing our 7th year. Please stay tuned. The final edition is coming up next right here on College 56 Sports.
That book was all right. You know, if she continues to spill product at a rate of 3 per hour, unit cost, say 60 cents. Factor in breakage, downtime, lost sales, you're looking at $2,400 a month. Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
The third annual Judy Marsh Memorial Golf Classic is just around the corner. This year's event is June 2nd at Deer Track Golf Course. Golf, green fees, cart, range balls, team photos, lunch and dinner, and prizes. This fundraiser helps support IPFW men's and women's golf teams and local charities. Sponsorship and participation opportunities are available. Pick up a brochure or for more information call 260-410-6511. The Judy Marsh Memorial Golf Classic, June 2nd at Deer Track Golf Course.
Hi everybody, I'm Mike Miles. Welcome to the final edition of Mastodon Spotlight for the 2005-2006 school year. Our special guest is Athletic Director Mark Pope. Mark, I'm very grateful that you're taking some time out of your very busy schedule to be with us, but it's something you and I have done now for a couple of times. We're going to try to condense 10 months of athletic activity into about 28 minutes of chat.
Okay, so that's about 2.8 minutes per sport. Okay, I've got it.
You ready? Here we go. We're going to start women's athletics first, and we're going to go in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Women's basketball, a somewhat unique year because there was a coaching change midway. Women tried hard, had a very rough start. Bruce Patterson resigned his position. Chris Paul became the interim coach, but the women's team finished very well, finished with 7 wins out of 28 games, but they won their 5 of the last 6 games to go off on a high.
Yeah, I think that this was probably the more, it's a tough one to start with because it was certainly the most traumatic sport of the year. Bruce's situation was one that unfortunately there were a lot of things coalescing in his mind from an emotional standpoint, from a family standpoint, that made Bruce decide the time had come to step down and focus more on family family situations. And I've told many people this, I just want to make sure everyone does know it, that if I were in Bruce's shoes, I would have done exactly the same thing Bruce did. He did the right thing for himself and for his family. So we gave Chris kind of an extended interview through the remainder of the season, and I think Chris has an entirely different approach both offensively and defensively than Bruce does, and it took the young ladies a while to catch up to that. But when we started playing our peer groups, and I think the turning game was probably the game at Purdue, where we really played Christy Curry's team very, very well, and Christy and I talked about that afterwards. She was very impressed with what Chris was trying to do with this group of young ladies. And then winning 5 of 6 against our peers gave me sufficient faith in Chris that he ought to be given a full season or 2 to see how he does. So that's the way we went.
Again, winning 5 out of 6 does leave a nice taste in your mouth at the end of the year.
You bet.
Women's golf, Jeff Marsh was able to recruit, get another person on board. They had 5 gals, so they all played in all the matches. That program is growing.
Well, and it's a brand new program. This was their first or second year of competitive matches, and the stroke average they had dropped dramatically. I mean, it's 40 strokes per match average drop. So that's amazing. What I've talked to Jeff about is to build some strength and stability in his program and add some numbers to it, and he's done just that. They will have 8 or 9 players next year, so that there'll be some inner competition, so the 5 who go will be the best 5 rather than the only 5. But that's the nature of the beast in Division I women's golf. At our level, you're not going to have a great deal of depth until you have a little bit of success, and then you start to build on that. So I think Jeff's going in the right direction.
Women's softball, a tough year for Keith Fisher and his squad. They finish 11-33. Not sure where to start on this, but they did win a few games down the stretch. And had 3 players that made the all-independent team.
Yeah, I think Keith is in a unique situation, and people ask me, why doesn't softball progress more than it has? And I think there are a couple of things. Keith's a good coach. He knows what he's doing. I like the fact that he recruits locally. Unfortunately, locally, there hasn't been the kind of pitcher available that we need, and in softball, pitching is just about everything. But Keith also sustained some rather significant injuries right off the bat. Had a couple of players, had a first-line pitcher and their starting first baseman go down to injuries, season-ending injuries. And it's tough to recover from that when you don't have the depth that a Division I AAA softball team usually carries. If I didn't think Keith was the right person, I'd ask Keith to move on. But I think he is. I think he can turn this thing around. I think that you will see a vastly different team next year than you saw this year. And so I think that this is a program that will move dramatically forward in terms of progress.
And I think we should congratulate Jenna Beachy and Casey Stone making all-independent first team, Katie Aspergen making all-independent second team, and Kayla Vargo all newcomer. So there is hope for women's softball.
Absolutely.
Women's soccer, 6-11-3 doesn't sound like a great record, but they finished winning the very first United Soccer Conference postseason tournament.
Right, and I think with women's soccer, it's similar to women's softball. Neither Terry nor Keith will shirk down from any level of competition. And if you look at the schedule that Keith played in softball, he's playing the Purdues and the Indianas and the Big Ten schools. If you look at women's soccer, it's the same thing. They're playing the MAC schools, which have a significantly longer Division I tradition and history, as well as more resources than we have. And so Terry is not worried about playing very high quality competition. And I think that proved at the end, and it's what I hope will be kind of our measuring stick going forward, that playing tough competition yields good results at the end. And I think if Terry had not played a strong schedule in the women's program, they would not have been able to come back and win both of their games in the tournament and claim that first conference title.
Eric Burns did a very nice job with both men's and women's tennis teams, and the women's team finished with a winning record, 17-13, came in third in the independent tournament, and Eric was the independent coach of the year.
Oh, I didn't know that. Was he really?
Yes, he was.
Geez, he'll probably be in my office asking for a raise now. Eric he's doing a tremendous job, and again, you have to understand, like a couple of our coaches, like Jeff Marsh, for example, Eric's running both programs, men's and women's, and that's not easily done. Even though the squad size may be a little smaller, you still got 2 schedules to put together. You've still got 2 groups of student athletes to make sure they're keeping their noses clean, going to classes and preparing and all of that. And in Eric's situation, you know, he's got to also schedule court time indoors because, you know, January tennis just doesn't go together outside. So he's, I think he's done a remarkable job, and I had a chance to watch a couple of the outdoor women's matches this spring, and the thing I'm enthused about is that they really do pull for each other, they cheer for each other. You see the ladies back and forth helping each other on points and things such as that. It's just a lot of fun to watch, and I see that level of competition increasing as we move on.
Again, kudos, sophomore Ashley Colson, first team all-independent, teammate Beth Miller, all-team, first team independent, and Beth finished with 20 wins, 15 straight, to finish out her career. Lisa Bartelheim and Hannah Hager made second team, and freshman Sashi Yannick took the number 2 spot on the all-newcomer team. So again, things look bright for women's tennis. Women's track and field. We don't have the time to talk about a lot of the accomplishments that they had, led by one super runner in Ashley Ritchie from Leo High School. Numerous school records were set again this year.
Yeah, in fact, I would joke with Mike Frucci when he came in on Monday after a weekend track meet. I'd say, well, how many? Not whether we did, but how many. And it was, you know, 3 here, 4 there, 5 there. And what that shows is that Mike is building a tremendous tradition on the track and field side that's only going to be enhanced as we move forward. As I'm sure most of our viewers know, we are working hard to build an indoor track here at IPFW. It'll be part of the Student Services Complex that will go right outside Gates and connect the library, Walb Union, and the Gates Sports Center. And once we can get a truly competitive indoor track and field operation building, it'll be the only one of its kind in Northeast Indiana. You'd have to go as far as Notre Dame or Purdue to find something similar. And it'll just be a tremendous boost to Mike's program. And so he's doing these things without the resources, without the facilities. Think what happens when we get them. Yeah. So it's fun to watch.
Final women's sport, women's volleyball. Another tremendous year for Kelly Hartley Hutton. 24-6. The only I don't know what the right term to use is. They were not able to defend their national independent championship, but they ran into a buzzsaw in South Dakota State, but still finishing third and having a third straight 20-plus win season is outstanding.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought you were going to say the final sport was cross country because I'm
going to branch cross country
alphabetically. I have XC for cross country, so volleyball would be before the X.
Well, that's the lawyer in you, Mark.
That's right. Are we going to do cross country?
I'm going to do cross country, tag it with the men's team.
Okay, you promise?
Promise.
All right, good. Then we'll talk about volleyball.
All right.
All right.
24-6, 3 straight 20-win seasons for Kelly.
Well, Kelly has really had a great run, and she will face significant challenges next year for 2 reasons. First of all is the loss of Fabiana Souza, and you don't replace a Fabi, you just try and find a way to work around that rather significant loss. But Fabi will be on campus, so we may sneak her into a game or 2 if we need it. She's going to be pursuing her master's degree in communications. And I just think it's wonderful. We're going to try and find a spot for her over in our athletics department to have her help us out, because she has been one of the greatest things that I've seen in my 5 years here at IPFW. So losing Fabi is a challenge. The other challenge is, of course, the agreement that we made with the MAC, that we will be playing 10 MAC matches each year, 5 here at IPFW and 5 on the road. And you know, in the past, a lot of those MAC schools would say, geez, you know, our schedule's filled up, wish we would have gotten to us earlier. We can't play on Monday through Sunday, but otherwise we're available. And now all of a sudden with Fabi graduating, they're all calling us and saying, oh yeah, you know, when do you want to play? So Kelly will have a challenge. I watched a little bit of her spring practice and her spring matches, and it's coming along pretty well. You know, there's a few holes to fill, certainly at the setter position, and then of course with Fabi on the outside. But I think she'll find those. She'll find the answers.
Second time Fabi was named Division I Offensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
A tremendous honor. She's a number of school records that some may not be broken for a long, long time, if ever.
Well, we hope they are broken.
That's true.
But you're right. I think realistically, I think you're right.
And also kudos to Erica Leitsky and Nicole Howell being named second team All-Independent, and Claire Jackson was honorable mention as well. That's women's sports. We're going to take a quick break, catch our breath, then talk about men's sports, and a lot more to talk with Athletic Director Mark Pope. Stay tuned. Mastodon Spotlight returns in a moment here on College 56 Sports.
While progress should never come to a halt, there are many places it should never come to at all. So we work locally with communities, businesses, and people like you to save precious places around the world, forever. I'm Paul Newman. Help the Nature Conservancy save the last great places.
Life is good, but with a master's degree from IPFW, it could be even better. You could land a promotion, earn more money, become a leader in your field. And IPFW makes it easy. With affordable tuition, night and weekend classes, and more than 20 graduate programs from business to education to public affairs and more. Become the master of your future. Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. Your graduate university.
On Spotlight, it's our year-end review of what's taken place on the athletic front. Our special guest is Athletic Director Mark Pope. We're done with the women for the moment, Mark. Now let's turn our attention to men's sports. And alphabetically, the letter B is the first one up. We start with baseball. Billy Gernon, I know he's not thrilled with the 21-28 record, but he played an outstanding schedule and did record a number of good victories this year.
Oh yeah, I think Billy will be the first to tell you he's disappointed. He had a senior-laden team, and he hoped that the seniors would be a little bit more experienced when it came to Division I competition. But on the same token, Billy ramped up that schedule, and so he's playing the Notre Dames at Notre Dame and teams such as that. And again, I think 3 consecutive 20-win seasons for Billy does go a long way too. When we had our season review, as you know, I meet with every coach at the end of their season and kind of walk through the positives, the negatives, and the plans for the future. I talked to him about pitching and about the need to really recruit hard in the northern Indiana area, and I think he's done that very well. I think you're going to see some pretty sharp prospects coming in here. But you know, the 15 to 11 games, the 13 to 12 games, yeah, some of it's wind, but a lot of it's just the arms got really tired.
The highlight, I think, had to be when they went out to Iowa City and took on the Iowa Hawkeyes, and in the second game of a doubleheader, a 10-inning, 1-0 shutout win on the road against a Big Ten opponent. Fantastic.
Yeah, which tells you exactly what I don't know about baseball, because I'm just talking about pitching, and then this is a 1-0, but that was a great game. And the Notre Dame game, 4-3 in extra innings. Again, he's doing the right things. He just needs to continue to find that level of talent that's going to get us to where we want to be.
You hired a new basketball coach, a gentleman from down in Bloomington named Dane Fife. 10-18, I thought, was a good start for the Dane Fife era.
Yeah, given Dane's schedule, I think that he did show a lot of progress. Certainly, Dane brought a new level of enthusiasm to our department and to this community. Season ticket sales were up by about 35 to 40%. Attendance was up significantly. I think we averaged another 1,000 per game in attendance overall. He also took Notre Dame down to the wire in a game, beat Indiana State at Terre Haute, and that was a few weeks after they had just knocked off IU on that same court. So given what he had, given what they were able to put together in a short period of time, 8 new recruits in, finalizing a pretty tough schedule and getting it done, I think Dane had a tremendous first year. What we are looking for him to do now, and I think he is driven to the point where we want to see at least a 500 season next year. And I think it's doable. He's got to get some kids in shape, both academically and athletically. The schedule's pretty well done. We have a few more dates that we need to firm up, but you know, by and large, we're ready to go, and I think he'll have another tremendous year.
Found out what kind of sense of humor he has too, on our show that we did together. Have to be on my toes with him, but he's a great kid.
He'll keep you moving.
Congratulations to DeWitt Scott for making all-independent first team as well for men's basketball. Now let's talk cross country briefly.
Okay, so now you're in
now
the
we're going to
C.
C. I'm C instead of X, even though I ran cross country for 2 years in high school, umpteen years ago. Again, Mike Frucci building a program for both men and women's. And I think you have to be proud of the fact that in 2006, in the fall of 2006, IPFW is going to host the National Independent Championship.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. And think about Mike's schedule. I mean, Mike is coaching men's and women's cross in the fall, women's indoor track in the winter, and women's outdoor track in the spring. He's got another job, too. So, you know, he's really our all-time utility coach, and we just thank God that he's around and able to do all that he does. Of course, the women's side, Mike's into twins. You got the Simpson twins and the Gonzalez twins, and that's okay because twins are, especially when twins get 4.0s, they're wonderful. I think the women's cross team had a 3.66 GPA in the fall. They kind of did a little better in the spring. They were 3.74 GPA. That's in the top 5 in the country. You can't thank Mike enough for what he's doing. They're competitive. They're moving up in terms of quality of meet and in finishing places. So yeah, I love cross country. I think Mike's doing the right things.
Back to golf for a brief moment. Again, Jeff Marsh building a program with the men's team as well as the women's team. I think the highlight of the year actually took place in the fall when IPFW hosted their first fall classic at Deer Track, and they came in 4th, and a lot of records were broken.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had a women's collegiate golf invitational in Fort Wayne. I think we may have had a men's match here back in the old D2 days, or even the NAIA days. But we've never had, I know we've never had a Division I men's and women's golf invitational here, and thank the folks at Deer Track and Paige Hoover for helping us out in that. It was a great event. Jeff's team dropped its stroke average, not as dramatically as the women's, but they did go down significantly. I know he has also recruited up, and we've got actually some very bright young men from this area, from Fort Wayne, who will be a big part of where we're going in the future.
I'll try to speed things along a little bit. Men's soccer, tough year for Terry, 3-17, 0-5 in the MAC. Again, combination injuries, fitting players in, playing tough opponents in the MAC. But I think the future is bright for men's soccer.
Yeah, I think Terry's got to start recruiting harder. I don't see the quality of player yet consistently across the board. There are some real highlights, but consistently we need a group of players on that field that can compete day in and day out. We're just not there yet.
Men's tennis, 11-16. Again, the MAC is a tough conference. I think of Western Michigan primarily. I think they were the conference champions again. But the team is making strides. Eric is building some depth. And I think, again, the future is nice there.
Yeah, I mean, we're out of our league in the MAC when it comes to men's soccer and men's tennis, and we know that. But it's a great ability to gauge yourself competitively to see how you're doing. So they were good enough to give us a couple of things that help us along and as well as put us in those 2 leagues. So you know, we'll take it while we're here.
Final sport, men's volleyball. Let's see, what did they do this year? They started out 2-5.
Yeah, they had a lousy year.
And then they became a team. A school record 16-match winning streak.
Yeah.
23-7 overall. They knocked off Loyola at Loyola to make it to the Final Four. Unfortunately, wasn't their best night, I should say, against UCLA, which went on to win the national championship for I think the 19th time. But a great season for Arnie Ball.
Well, you know, and I talked to Arnie about this in our season review. I said, you know, Arnie, if you play your absolute best against UCLA and they play their absolute best, I think the result probably ends up the same. UCLA was just on a roll that weekend. We just didn't get some things done that we wanted to. But I don't want that to deter or diminish what was an absolutely fabulous season. You know, for years and years and years, I've heard that the move to Division I is going to stifle men's volleyball because they can't recruit the kind of a D1 player. You know, back in the old days of D2, they could recruit D2 student athletes. Now they've got to recruit D1 student athletes, and there's a big difference academically. But Arnie got it done, and I think he's shown the rest of our coaching staff that it can be done. You can accomplish this thing here in Fort Wayne at IPFW. And of course the exciting part is, even though we lose a couple of outstanding young men, the recruiting class for Arnie is even better. I mean, well, I don't think we're going to miss a beat.
And kudos to one C.J. Macias making 2nd team All-American. In fact, there's some highlights from the match with UCLA. C.J. Macias coming over from Findlay when Findlay dropped their program, and he fit in rather nicely.
Yeah.
And he was 2nd in the country in kills per game overall. So again, a great year for men's volleyball. We've got about 3 minutes, if I can stretch 3.5 minutes left. One of your favorite topics, Mark, is academics, and you briefly alluded to it. Spring semester for the entire athletic department, 3.03. They're getting the job done in the classroom.
Well, you know, and I stress this because, you know, academics, we follow the university's mission, and the university's mission is academics, so athletics will always follow that. You know, 5 years ago, I set an academic goal of a 3.0 GPA and was kind of laughed out of the room. Well, I'm here to tell you, for the last 3 years, we've hit that goal. 3 straight years, our student athletes have hit a 3.0 GPA for the academic year. This year was the best. The fall was a 3.09, and the spring was a 3.03, averaging out about a 3.06. I defy any other Division I program in this area to do that. I'd like to know who they are and compete against the kind of competition that we are, you know, looking up most of the time. It just can't be done. And that's not me, Mike. I set a goal and got out of the way. And then it's the coaches, and it's the academic advisors, and it's our compliance people, and it's our faculty athletic reps, and it's professors who work hard to help us get around situations like Arnie going to the Final Four during finals week. And then mostly it's the student athletes who take their laptops on trips to North Dakota State and Utah Valley State and get the work done. And that's what this is all about at the end of the day, and we're achieving it.
97 student athletes had a grade point of 3.0 and 16 had a 4.0. I've got about a minute left,
okay.
So we're going to dodge one final question. The viewers know Valparaiso is leaving the Mid-Con after next year, going to the Horizon League. IPFW possibly getting into the Mid-Con?
Well, the Mid-Con's in a tenuous situation right now at 7 teams. They're right on the bubble when it comes to an AQ for men's basketball, which is the big dollar number. They are underwater with several AQs when it comes to baseball and track and some other sports. They need 6 teams to compete to get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, and they don't have that now. So the Mid-Con will expand. Now the question is who? We hope it's us. We've put in what I think is a fairly representative profile, institutional profile, that describes in great detail what we've done over the last 4 or 5 years. And as I told Tom Duple, who's the commissioner of the Mid-Con, you know, I'm not so sure 5 years ago we were ready to do this. But I know we're ready now. We're ready academically, we're ready geographically, and most importantly to the Mid-Con, we're ready athletically. our teams can compete with mid-con teams and get the job done. So I think this 5-year growth period, while it has been a limbo for a lot of us and a purgatory for a lot of us, may be the kind of a cleansing that we need to move to that next level, and I think we're ready to go.
We're out of time. We got
What a
it
surprise.
done. 30 minutes. Mark, thank you so much as always for all your help and for spending time with us. Continued success, and let's see what the fall brings.
Yep, we're ready for a big summer.
Our special guest has been Athletic Director Mark Pope. That's it for this year of Mastodon Spotlight. Thanks to all our coaches and student athletes. Thanks to Mark. Thanks to you for tuning in. Lord willing, we'll be back in August for year number 8 of Mastodon Spotlight. But until then, this is Mike Maas. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching Mastodon Spotlight. Please enjoy the summer, and we'll see you again come August.